First topic is the approval of the agenda. I do have a slight modification to start things off with. After the policy review that Ryan is going to be going on with us, I'm going to be going into executive session at that point in time. Okay. So we'll have a brief time there in an executive session. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. We have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Say. Brett, we'll start with you with, let's take a cool moment.
So cool moments for this month. We've got a lot of the activities going on. So Camp Kilowatt is the youth camp. Crystal and Sam, our two employees, participated as a adult sponsor, and so thought that was cool. You got anything you want to share?
I was actually just elected today as the camp director. So exciting.
It's a cool opportunity for the kids. And like I said, Sam participated and still do. Another thing that I thought needed to be recognized was IEC has, their regular courses. And if there are employees of the different co-ops under IEC have employees that want to teach these courses, they can. And so Crystal actually facilitated course that was called
Perception versus reality.
Perception versus Reality. So I thought, again, that was kind of a cool thing. I think that was a first for you, right? So anyways, I want to recognize Crystal doing that. Safety minute. So for our safety committee, we get near miss reports from Federated, and those are actually very valuable because across the United States, anyone that has a near miss, there's actually a really good website with a dashboard that allows people to submit their local near misses. And we participate in that. And one came up that I thought, is relevant, especially as we get into the dry seasons. I know my grass is about half dead. We're getting there. Anyways, for this one here, there was, a dispatch call out of fire. What actually happened was, so we can there are two things to keep varmints off poles. One is this, which is to keep trees trimmed from it so you don't have squirrels and things jumping from branch to the top of the pole. The other one is Varmint Guards, which is the wrap that you see typically around the poles. And so this one here, a squirrel jumped up, got on the cutout. It blew the cutout. If you blow a cutout, typically you're going to have sparks. Sparks hit the ground, cause some grass fire. So I just thought that was relevant. We've spent a lot of time and effort and money into a right-of-way program. And so this is just another sort of benefit of doing the right-of-way and making sure that we have clearance around all of our poles, because apparently squirrels jump from those trees to the poles and can cause problems. That's what I got.
Okay, thanks, Brett. Let's go ahead and talk through anything for your information. Anybody have anything to hear? Have questions?
I had sent an email earlier about the budget update on the CTO with the new documented changes from the special meeting report.
Is that right here?
I just updated it this, I can update it again, but I didn't know if that got changed.
Is this essentially what you're talking about?
That's one of them.
That's one of them. And then the 1% of the total utility plan, the 4.6 million CapEx. It was basically just the special meeting, the special session minutes were not updated to the budget.
Where's the 4.6?
the CapEx, which includes the 2021 carryover projects. I was just looking off the meeting minutes in February. I think we discussed it, and then I looked and thought maybe had not been updated, but it was under 6B on the February 2022 minutes.
There's the 4.6.
Okay, maybe is mine not just updated then?
No, that's what we approved in the budget was the 4.6. But one of the other things that's not in there is the adding of the meter tech.
Yeah, so the meter tech we talked about in the budget review, and the idea was that we didn't know when we were going to have that person start. So we didn't want to put it in, and then, if we put it in at the beginning of the year, person doesn't start till mid-year. So the idea was once we have an idea of when that person was going to start, we were going to actually put it into the budget.
So when is that?
The meter tech is hired, so it is in the budget, or it's not in the budget, it's in the actuals now.
So we've hired a meter tech? I was talking about staking tech.
Oh, no. That one is not. And no, so we don't know when. We've got
That needs to be added into the budget. If you're gonna, this was in February when it was approved, so it should have been put in wherever you thought it was gonna go, it should have been put into that budget.
But we talked about it in that budget review that we didn't know exactly when it was, so we didn't know where to put it.
So we're not planning on doing it this year.
No, we definitely are. We got approval in the budget to do it. The point is we don't.
But then please put it into the budget where you think you're gonna hire it.
Where do you want us,
September, plug it in September.
where do you want us to put it?
I want you to hire the person. We requested it back in December. So
We've got,
wherever you think it's gonna be in the budget, please add it in.
it's in the, can we put it in the actuals then?
Put it in the departments.
So in the actual, like financials, in the LE and the financials.
No, it wouldn't go into your LEs. It would go into your operations department.
So
It's the budget we approved in February.
I'm just asking where you want me to put it.
We want you to hire.
And we are working on that.
Okay.
So where do you want me to put it in?
Where's it coming out of when they get hired?
That person will be all over the budget. They'll be in her department, they'll be in operations department, they'll be in maintenance department. And that's why when we talked in the budget review, it didn't make any sense to make estimates on where that person's going to be spending time at. So we're talking the staking.
Okay, so with the other ones, the approval, the cleaning service is still twice a week?
Right.
Okay. And then the approval of the budget with the training and staff or employees, that any unused money has to get approved by the board still?
Correct.
So we had that special session and we just none of that had gotten updated with the budget from that.
So I'm unclear on what you guys need me to up.
If you go, I'm just looking at February 2022, 6B, that special session that we did. There's 5 bullet points that the budget has not reflected all of those changes yet.
That's where I'm asking, where in the budget does that not reflect?
Page 3, the write-up or the.
It'll also go on your overall financials for borrowing money because it should lower what you have to borrow by about 800,000 cash flow.
I think that's more was a timing thing than.
I think year end, I think you had it ending at 1.3 million. I just tried to call it up and it won't come up on my dashboard for whatever reason.
So what in this document do you guys need updated is what I'm asking.
Anything to do with cash flow, borrowing money, and the amount of money you're going to keep on hand.
Essentially, this is what we think right here. These two need to be changed.
Correct. And then wherever that falls in the budget itself,
It doesn't fall in anywhere in here.
it would fall on your cash flow.
Let's go.
Borrowing money. You're projected to borrow 3.2 million and you would be lowering that by almost 800,000
Where's that at in here?
cash flow
Let's go to cash flow.
because you have borrowing 3.2 million.
Where is that? Cash flow is not even in here.
Well, it's in total, so it's gonna.
This one right here.
Yeah, you're borrowing 3.2 million.
Know where we're at on here, it needs to be updated then.
It's under the borrowing RUS. It needs to be, what number do we really need to borrow since we don't need to borrow 3.2?
Isn't that just timing then?
No, because you were wanting to keep it 800,000 at all times, and that's not our policy.
What else then besides those two things? The 4.6 is what it's always been. You guys didn't change that.
Can I ask you, how did you get 800?
When you bring down to you're keeping the 1% plan assets,
Yeah, which is 500,000.
350.
How do you figure?
It's off the 4.7.
Net utility.
Correct.
It says total utility, not net.
Okay, so we're saying
It's
500,000.
500, not 300.
Okay, I see.
So it would reduce it 300,000.
Or is it
Not eight.
for timing though?
Well, but I mean, that, it's not $800,000 discrepancy. It's not that much. It's not net utility plan, it's total utility plan.
I had just not seen those 5 bullet points represented in the updated budget. That's where I was at from in the other month.
They are except for that one, right? Is that what we're saying though? These two right here.
Right, I did the information regarding the cleaning services and the budget was just the amounts. I just want to make sure they were still being followed.
Yeah, they
in the
are.
special meeting.
So the only one is the 2 to 1. And so it's essentially this. And then Matt, you'll look at the cash flow.
It'd actually be about 510,000. For policy.
But some of that'll be timing, right?
Right.
So
But I mean, that 800,000 number you have on there should be 500 or
Yeah,
510.
and this cash flow is sort of irrelevant at this point. So I don't know if we just want to reflect it on the current. This was a budget from September. We just want to take that as an action item just to,
Well, it also somewhat plays into the financial planning and everything else conversation to,
All other things being equal, you would reduce the borrowing potential by 300,000 and per this.
that's about what, yeah, that's
290,000 to be exact.
something like that, yeah.
Okay.
It is more of a timing issue, it looks like, going through the cash flow throughout,
It would go to from 3.2 to 2.9.
something like
If
that.
everything else is exactly the same.
Yes,
all right, so is there anything else on here?
but again, the board approves any borrowing, so there's not any borrowing being done without your approval.
Anything else?
Check register on page 4. What's the AMP construction, AMPP?
And it's working on our,
G1.
they're doing a construction work plan project, G1. They're doing construction for us.
I know we budgeted, and I meant to email this question. Is the women's restroom have been updated?
No, we haven't.
I didn't know if that was part of AMP Construction's cost or anything internal.
No.
Everything, okay, so none of the construction costs, because we budgeted for that, right? That's all approved. It just hasn't been done.
Correct.
Have any other questions? Just for your information.
the key indicator page, we talked about this last month. You can leave the names on here, put a number by those next time. So if we have discussions about individual.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Identify by number, not name.
All right, you want me to just,
You can leave the names on there, but just put 1, 2,
okay,
whatever.
add the number.
Yeah.
I'm following you. I'll do that right
Put like right under just company 1, company 2, company 3. Yeah. That's good.
Anything else?
So what, tying this up, so what do we, we've got this in construction for about 268,000. What's that? What are we getting?
It's the G1 construction work plan project.
Hey, help me out here.
I don't even know how to explain that. I can get you the information, but it should be on your construction work plan. Projects. It's part of the approved, what you guys approved is CapEx. AMP was the one that won the bid on that. I'm looking for that.
Well, drive the plan. I don't know that you're gonna see it. Gotcha. I mean, it could be materials, who knows? Kind of very.
It's part of the approved construction.
Okay.
Be better to see that ahead of time.
We good to go on? All right, we'll go to the next item. Approval of last week's security minutes. To approve, or if anybody needs to be changed, that's the time. The first and the second. Jim. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say. All right, we're good there. Ryan, you're on the next piece. You're going to be one of the recent policy reviews with us.
Yep, glad to do that, Steve. So good to see everybody. Thanks for having me back again. I actually have I don't know how you'd like to do this, but I've got a PowerPoint presentation to go through, probably, I think 12 or 13 slides, just
Okay.
kind of an overview of directors' duties and responsibilities in connection with co-op board service. And then there's some policy references in there. You're gonna probably skip over that slide and then we'll review the policies at the end, if that's okay with everybody. Thanks.
Sounds like a plan.
Well, you can't see it yet, can you? No. There we go. Okay, good deal. Okay, so effectively, the the purpose of my visit today is to talk about just your duties and responsibilities as co-op directors. And this has its roots in a variety of different legal obligations, but it also is reflected in the bylaws of the cooperative as well as the cooperative's policies in a variety of ways. And you'll see where there's the dovetailing of those two issues as we go through those policies later on in the meeting. So really, it's important for compliance reasons to make sure you all understand what your duties and responsibilities are, have the opportunity to ask questions about those, and we can talk about those if you'd like. But it's also your responsibility because it's important to understand the fact that as directors, you aren't necessarily, you're all individuals, of course, because we're all sitting here as individuals, but you are the cooperative. The cooperative as an entity acts through agents, and those agents can be employees of the cooperative. They can be directors of the cooperative. They can be people who aren't even employed by the cooperative, but are given the agency to act on the cooperative's behalf. Your lawyer would be someone like that, right? So there are a variety of ways that someone can bind the cooperative by virtue of their own actions. And so it's important to understand that your acts, omissions, and words are what the cooperative is and does, and can legally bind the REMC. And so you have an individual obligation to ensure that you comply with the bylaws and the policies of the cooperative, as well as your fundamental legal obligations, just as the cooperative has that obligation to ensure that its employees follow those bylaws, policies, and laws, and that anyone it does business with is as well. So continue on here. So a few more points about why this is important. Obviously, if there is some sort of legal claim, that is an unpleasant experience. Anytime you've got to deal with lawyers, typically that's something people don't want to have to do, and it can give rise to significant financial liability. Financial liability, though, is not the only liability that it can expose the co-op to, also reputational liability, right? So that's reputational liability, not just in terms of the way we think of the co-op's reputation, just as what people think of their power company, right? Because I think if you ask a lot of folks, just generally, if you did a public opinion poll on power companies, they probably say generally a thumbs down, right? Reputational liability can have an impact on your creditworthiness. It can have an impact on lenders and how they interact with you. It can have an impact on business partners and how they do too. So it's important to avoid a legal claim because obviously we don't want to jeopardize that sort of reputation and credibility. And then also it jeopardizes our ability to retain and recruit key staff members. That extends to employees as well as directors. And so really the fundamental baseline that underlies any director's responsibility to an organization, so that's a for-profit organization, that's a not-for-profit organization like a co-op, is your fiduciary duty. And there are really three elements to that you've probably seen in the co-op's bylaws and in the co-op's policies. So the first one is you got to carry out your duties in good faith, right? There can't be any ulterior motive. The intent of the action has to be pure. That means that you've got to, in good faith means what you reasonably think is in the best interest of the cooperative, not what I think if I were a director in the best interest of Brian, right? It's got to be in what you reasonably conclude is in the best interest of the cooperative. And when making those decisions and taking those actions, you've got to use the same degree of care as the law says is an ordinarily prudent person. Right? The difficulty here is we all think we're a prudent person, and not everybody is a prudent person. So it is a standard that the law looks at and sort of peels back that layer of the onion to say, all right, well, what are you doing to be acting as an ordinarily prudent person? What are you relying on? Are you relying on advice from experts? Are you relying on information that you gathered? Have you reviewed the information? And are you asking questions about the information that you're provided by the organization? That's what an ordinarily prudent person would do, even if you subjectively may think that, well, I really don't need to do that to be prudent because I have it all what I know up here. The law says, oh, you've actually got to do a little bit of work to make sure you're using that degree of care as an ordinarily prudent person. And then you've got to act in the best interest of the cooperative, right? So I think the most fundamental thing that you can't do as a director, and there's a full policy on this, of course, that we'll review in brief later, but the conflicts of interest policy, right? You're not acting in the best interest of the cooperative if you've got a conflict of interest as it's defined in that policy. Because then what the policy says is if there is that conflict, then it's impossible for you to act in the best interest of the cooperative unless there's a form of disclosure. And then the rest of the board says, yeah, okay, we understand Brian has a competing interest, but given all the circumstances, we think Brian can act in the best interest of the cooperative in spite of that competing interest. Right? So that's really, I think, probably the most apparent one is the conflicts of interest standard, but it also means that you've got to put the cooperative first, not any personal gain or motive, right? That also means that if there are members in your particular district who have a particular motive or interest, it's fine to advocate for those interests, but when making a decision, you got to say, I'm not making a decision because I believe it's in the best interest of a member or a group of members, but because it's in the best interest of the cooperative. Now, of course, in your judgment, those two things may coincide, right? So they don't have to be mutually exclusive, but you've got to, when you make a decision on behalf of the co-op, anytime you're voting on an issue or taking an action on behalf of the REMC, you've got to think, is this in the best interest of the co-op? And then you can't use your director position for individual advantage, right? We see our neighbors over to the west in Illinois. This is an easy example, a lot of the politicians in that state have used their position for individual advantage, meaning that they have gotten payments for themselves as a result of things that they're doing in office, right? Now, they end up in federal prison as a result of that. And so that's probably the most egregious example of using a director position for individual advantage. But it's also a good one because that's the concept, right? That fiduciary duty to act in the best interest means that I can't use my position to get something for myself that I otherwise couldn't get. So I know those are some general concepts, but many times there's lots of questions about, okay, well, how might that apply in a certain circumstance? Those often can be very, very detailed inquiries. But I think the concepts are important for you to keep in mind. And I would say if there's one slide you take away from today as being the most important one, this one's it, right? This is, if you think about sort of the pyramid of obligations of directors, right? You've got the most fundamental, broad-based are your legal obligations. Because those apply no matter whether we have bylaws or what policies say or anything like that. And then next above that will be our bylaws and then our policies stack up on top of that, right? So basics, fiduciary duties, biggest thing for you to take away from here today. Because, I mean, first and foremost, I think it helps you make you a good director and a beneficial director for the cooperative, but also understanding that, lawyer, and I'm here because obviously failure to comply with those requirements can lead to legal liability, both for the co-op itself and for individual directors in certain circumstances. And so what does it mean to be personally liable for issues as a director? Well, it means that exactly what it says, right? That means personally, not just that the co-op engaged in unlawful conduct, but that the director did something unlawful. That makes the director personally liable. Now, the standard is really high to show personal liability for something, but it still happens, right? And that means that there are personal assets at risk as a result, if damages are shown as a result of the employees or the director's improper conduct. So personal bank accounts, investments, assets, things like that. And why would somebody involve a director? There are many reasons, right? The reputational risk associated with a case in a lawsuit, much more likely that a lawyer would say, look, we're going to raise the stakes by getting the individuals involved rather than just the organization involved. Because when it's just the organization involved, there's some anonymity there, right? It's a corporate entity in some way, shape, or form. And then there's not as much urgency associated with that. You think, okay, this gets sued all the time, right? But when there are people named in the lawsuit, then that raises the stakes for a variety of reasons. So there's all kinds of different legal theories that could give rise to corporate exposure for the co-op or personal liability for employees and directors. I won't go through each and every one of these, right? But some that come to mind when we think about areas that could be risky would be breach of contract, right? So we have, as co-op, have contracts with a variety of entities. And then we're obligated to hold to our promises in those contracts. We can't breach them. Antitrust violations. This is, this ebbs and flows, I would say, with the occupant of the White House, because the antitrust statutes are most often enforced by the Department of Justice. And so you get different standards of enforcement depending on the occupant of the White House. But generally, if what we call market participants, if people who are in a competitive market discuss sensitive competitive information with each other, that's the foundation of what could lead to an antitrust claim. Basically saying you took an action to exclude other competitors from the market and to keep that market for yourself, or for yourself and one other market participant, that allows you to raise costs and then pass those costs on to consumers, which obviously the law says is unlawful. Harassment, discrimination claims, typically by employees or contractors. Defamation claims, we've probably heard a lot more about defamation claims just in the last year as a result of Johnny Depp being in the news. Maybe the lawyers in the room hear more about the Johnny Depp case than normal humans do, but we don't think of lawyers as normal humans, but that's still something. A defamation claim is basically a false statement about someone that causes that person damage. Invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, those are sort of more general torts that could apply too. And one thing that I also wanted to bring up is the concept of insurance for this, right? Because the fact that you are directors and some are officers of the organization means that you are covered by an insurance policy, I would presume. And I think these are actually snippets. And I don't know if it's the current REMC insurance policy, but it surely was a previous one. And it's important to have D&O insurance in place because you all have to make decisions and take actions on behalf of the co-op at each one of these meetings that could give rise to some of those claims when you've done nothing wrong, right? We see that all the time, frankly, where lawsuits are filed and there are legitimate defenses to those suits. And so there's got to be a safety net in place if that would happen. And that's in the form of directors and officers insurance. And so it provides protection for directors and officers against claims that may be asserted. And as you can see, like without trying to go into all the terms of the insurance policy, it covers a wide variety of claims that could be covered, right? In Section D, the term wrongful act. Any actual or alleged error, misstatement, misleading statement, omission, neglect, or breach of duty by one or more of the insurers while acting in their individual or collective capacities as authorized representatives of the entity. That's very, very broad, right? That means basically any sort of claim, most any sort of claim is going to be covered by one of these policies. There's always a but to that, right? Like anytime I'm talking about these, but right, there's going to be an exception to that. And there are particular types of claims that result in the denial of coverage. And these will go back. That's why I said that previous slide was the most important one, right? Because it ties into really what that fundamental legal duty is, right? So the company here, the insurance company, shall not be liable to make any payment of loss in connection with any claim made against the insured, CA, which result in a finding of personal profit, gain, or advantage, right? Remember, one of the fiduciary duty standards was when you think about the actions you're taking, it's got to be in the cooperative's interest rather than for a personal profit or gain. And so basically the insurance companies have said, look, if there's a finding that you took that action for personal gain, then we're not going to be on the hook for the defense. And then there are a variety of other ones, right? So invasion of privacy, libel or slander or defamation of character, those sorts of claims are ones that insurance companies said we're not going to protect against those. So there are those carve outs. The vast majority would fall under the other one, but there are carve outs for some sort of other sorts of inappropriate. So there are bylaw provisions on this. Section 4.02 codifies the fiduciary duty standards. Again, those three being good faith, taking action of an ordinarily prudent person and in the best interest of the cooperative. And then there are director qualification standards as well. that directors have to comply with. I'm sure you all have seen these, so I just wanted to reference those to show that this all, at a fundamental level, all of this really ties in together and has a meaning, not just because, back in, I'm not sure when the REMC was incorporated, but a long time ago, right? Those gentlemen, I presume, that are in the picture over there, just because they took a form off the shelf somewhere and said, hey, that's what we're supposed to put in it, so that's what we put in it. They're in the bylaws because they have a specific rooting in the legal duty that is owed to the cooperative and to the cooperative members. Okay, we're going to go over these policies here in just a minute. I did want to talk to you about confidentiality obligations. We've talked about this in the past, I know. We just talk about examples of items that are confidential. And really, these, again, go back into the areas of legal risk that I identified. I want to try to weave this all together as much as I can for everyone. And so, for example, employee identifying information, personnel records and performance records, right? Those are kept confidential because the publication of those records outside the cooperative could be seen as something that would be either an invasion of privacy or could be defamatory, right? If something in there was falsified and it's not true. That's why the best policy is that those are kept confidential to avoid those sorts of claims. And then the second one relates directly to the antitrust standard that I mentioned, right? The information that may be used to limit or gain competitive advantage. So employee salaries that are under 990 requirements, so keeping those confidential is important, not because we don't want people to talk with each other or we don't want to talk with others about what people get paid, but because the Department of Justice has said sharing that information too broadly can actually be the foundation for an antitrust claim because it can be used by market participants, either other businesses in the area, other co-ops, to say, if the REMC is only paying that, we're only going to pay that. Right? If they're paying, it's usually something that's used to suppress wages, not to elevate wages, right? So that's why that is best kept confidential. Third party contracts is typically the same way, many times because those will have confidentiality obligations in them, right? So if we as a co-op, when we sign those contracts, agree to keep them confidential, that confidentiality obligation extends to board members as well. And then third party trade secrets, right? The NRECA 10-year financial forecast model is one, I think, the example that was given in previous years, but that's something that the NRECA views as a trade secret that they've invested quite a bit of know-how into developing. And so that we have to keep confidential as well. And then information relating to pending or potential litigation, only because many times that information is covered by the attorney-client privilege. There are not very many times when the attorney-client privilege can be shared by many individuals, right? Typically, the attorney-client privilege is shared between an individual and his or her lawyer. But in a board of directors situation, not in this one because we obviously have third parties present here, but in a situation like this, if I were providing you legal advice, right, about pending or potential litigation, well then that is privileged information. That means if you're on a witness stand in court and you're asked to testify to it, it's covered by the privilege. You can legitimately say, I'm not going to answer that question because it's covered by the attorney-client communication privilege. But that privilege belongs to the co-op. And so the co-op is the only one who can waive it. So by disclosing that information outside the privilege setting, you waive the privilege on behalf of the co-op, which you don't have the authority to do absent the board collectively authorizing the waiver of that privilege. Now, I'm not going to try to cram a whole semester of law school classes into that one last bullet point, right? And I'm probably getting too close to that already. But I just want to try to let you know why it's important to keep that information confidential, unless there's a conscious decision by the board to say, yep, we're going to share it. And that applies to all the information on that sheet. I would say one thing that I often get questions about when covering this slide during this presentation is on the employee salaries under the 990 requirements. Don't we share that with organizations like IEC? And we do, but we share it anonymously and they publish it anonymously. So the fact that it's shared and it's shared anonymously, so there's no name associated with it, is the same as if with your businesses you've ever done a sort of wage and salary survey. you're probably going to get wage and salary data for job types in areas with certain experience levels, things like that. But you're not going to get something that says, hey, at this company, they're paying this amount, right? So when you scrub some of the information from it, that removes the confidentiality interest and allows the disclosure of the information. So those are examples of items that are confidential. There's a variety of examples that are obviously not confidential. Meeting minutes, obviously, minutes of the annual meeting, financial and statistical data that's submitted to public agencies, director information, attendance, expenses, and compensation. Obviously, we file all that on a 990, just like employee compensation information. And then for members, their own file information, right? Meter reading, billing data, and payment records, all of those are not confidential. So now I've covered all my preliminary slides. Why don't we go back and I will just go through a few of these policies I think everyone should have. And unless someone would like me to read them, I'm not going to read them. I think we can all be on the same page there. But I did want to just mention what they cover and how they relate to the presentation I just gave, right? So why don't we start with the board and CEO employee interrelationship. That's policy 1-1 I have is 1-3C. Is that the right version? That's correct.
Yes.
So the purpose behind a policy like this is typically to prevent there from being the sharing of any confidential information. It shouldn't be shared one way or the other, from the board to the employees or from the employees to the board, and provides a point of contact for the board. And it provides a variety of terms that govern the relationship between the board and the CEO, and outline just generally what the board expects the CEO to do, and what the board expects the rest of the board to do when communicating with the CEO or other employees of the company. In my view, it's relatively self-explanatory, but I guess I'll leave some space if you'd like, Steve, for questions or discussions about each of these as I do that. That's fine. Review that. And if you'd like to go into detail on any more of these, I'm glad to do it. Obviously, I've read these. I have not gone through them in detail or do not have any knowledge of how they've been applied here in the past, but glad to facilitate a discussion about them if you'd like.
Any questions on 1-3 then?
And I'm assuming this goes back to any of the board members being able to have a discussion with any of the employees and so on like that. Outside, not necessarily outside here, but it seems really odd to me as a business owner to not have the opportunity to talk with an employee to help benefit the company. In this case, the co-op, just to get some information from what the needs, wants, anything else. This seems bizarre to me that you can't do that. Help me understand why a person can't do this.
Well, I would say this policy more than any of the others reflects a more fundamental policy decision by this board about how this board wants to interact with employees of the cooperative, right? Now, obviously, there are a variety of different potential legal liability on a number of fronts from interacting with them, right? That could happen if you see somebody, if you're not talking about anything about the co-op and you make some sort of inappropriate comment to one of the employees of the co-op, you kind of never get to take off your director hat, right? So, and that person never takes off their employee hat. So if you had a few too many drinks one night at the bar and you make a comment that is sexually inappropriate to an employee of the cooperative, well, then that runs the risk of incurring legal liability. But I don't know that that would necessarily violate this policy, because we wouldn't be talking about matters related to the cooperative, right? And that's what this policy, I think, prevents. So I think the most I could say about this, and maybe other folks on the board could provide more detail, but I've seen different versions of this policy with different co-ops. And generally, these policies reflect whatever the board wants to do in terms of its relationship with employees.
How long ago was this rule made up that you can't speak with the employees about? Does anybody have a clue?
I don't know that, Clay. I don't have the background on this one. I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear it.
It stumps me that how you're supposed to go through and help the co-op in your best interest, their best interest. They're the ones doing the job. They're the ones out here in the field, and you can't even discuss with them as a team or don't need.
I guess I have a question regarding, or kind of a follow-up on that, Clay. I guess, to me, to what extent is that conversation? I mean, I don't interpret it in a literal sense that you can't talk to the employees. I don't, I never have. To take an issue and, for lack of a better term, to crusade that issue or to carry the torch for that issue, I see as something totally different.
Whether it be a case where you've got a situation is there with, and nothing in particular. Okay, so I'm not going anywhere with this. Besides the fact that if you've got an employee that has an issue with something or wants to go over something, so you can bring it in front of the board to go over making a change, making an improvement, doing anything. You know, we can't even discuss that from what I'm gathering. You can't discuss anything with them from a standpoint. It'd be like, you know, to me, it's one thing, if I own the business and I can't, and I've got somebody in the middle and I got the employees out of the shop and I can't go to them to find out what I can do to make their life better, to improve anything, even hear a complaint, a praise, anything, I gotta go through the middleman. It just don't make sense to me at all from that standpoint. I ought to be able to talk to the people that are taking care of you. And you're wanting to take care of them. That's what this doesn't mean.
Ryan, are most cooperatives that way, that board of directors are not allowed to speak to RMC employees regarding RMC issues?
Suzanne, I don't know if
Or is it just board to board decision?
It is, I don't know if I've done a survey of this
I was just curious to see if that was normal.
but I certainly I've seen it approached this way at others, and I've seen it approached differently.
So just board to board decision.
I wish I could give you kind of a, percentage wise, but, and that certainly may be something that IEC could provide in terms of a market survey as to how co-ops in the state have fallen out on that. But I know that there's been more than one approach.
Or even just examples of how other policies are written. So possibly we could rewrite this policy. Is that something we could get through IEC? Steve, or?
It sounds like we can.
I would think so.
I kind of, and I'm probably totally misinterpreted it, but I kind of felt like the board collectively had kind of taken an attitude of leniency towards this policy. Is that not the case?
I don't discuss email, happy birthday, thank you, without copying Brett on anything. I copy Brett on every single employee email that goes out because I don't want to be
But
accused of discussing
if
the
the board's
employee.
appetite is for a little leniency in this policy, then let's fix it.
I would like that.
We can put that question there as far as.
Sure, I mean, it was,
Okay.
Ready for Brian to go to the next policy?
So the next one on the Director Code of Ethics and Oath of Office, I think you've probably seen a lot of these concepts already in the presentation, right? That essentially basically just says that you are going to exercise your fiduciary duties in your role as a director. right? So all of these various things you'll see have their roots in that standard that we talked about already, the fiduciary duty, as well as the duties under the bylaws as well. And I won't go over any of these. I don't know if you actually take this oath of office or how you've ascended to that, or if once you've been elected to office, whether you do anything with this. It certainly reads that way, but
Yeah, they sign
okay,
basically a form that just says I read.
gotcha. So yeah, all of those are really the same standards that I talked to you about in this presentation.
Not what the signature is presumed.
Any questions about this one?
Agree with you.
And hopefully now you'll be able to read through this and you can say, okay, well, now I get right why it says this. We talked about that in the presentation. There's where this is rooted in an explanation of sort of the whys behind all the various statements in this. Any questions about that one before I move on to 113?
I think you move on.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. So 113, the whistleblower policy, really doesn't do like the code of ethics does. It really reflects the standards that are expected of directors. The whistleblower policy is in effect to make sure that all directors and employees, for that matter, comply with those standards, right? So that whistleblower policy says if those things haven't happened, then it's established a process for reporting those concerns, both for directors and for employees. And there has to be a reporting method for obviously for us to be able to police those standards effectively. And that's what the whistleblower policy does. It says if you have information that says some policy of the cooperative, some bylaw, some obligation that a director or employee has to the cooperative hasn't been followed, this is how you go about reporting that. And then this is what the cooperative's obligation is when that happens. Questions on that one?
I would like to see more information added to this. Provisions and conditions 2 under A1, report to general manager, president, general manager, or the REMC general counsel. I think we need to list who general counsel is. Because I'm thinking that in this case, it would be you, as our HR board governance attorney. I think that needs to be spelled out on this policy.
I would say at the bottom, it does say REMC corporate counsel as well. I know those probably mean the same thing, but it's good to have consistency in terminology in the policy, just to make sure nobody's confused. Okay, that one's 113. 114 is much longer, so I'm not going to go into its provisions, right? But I think really when I look at this policy, the part that's most important to me, and I think should be most important to you too, when you really think about, okay, when do I need to dig into the particulars of this policy, is in section 1A, objectives. And it's really the second line. To protect the RMC's interest when it is contemplating entering into a transaction or arrangement that might benefit the private interest of an officer or director of the RMC or might result in a possible excess benefit transaction, right? So, hey, you're looking through the agenda, you're looking through the materials that are posted to Board Pack or whatever it is that you use for your board materials, and you say, I've got some relationship with an entity that the co-op is doing business with, whether that's a financial interest, whether it's a personal interest, a family interest, something like that, then that should be the trigger to say, okay, well, I need to go down and look through the provisions of the policy to say, what do I do as a result of that, right? And I would, in my view, the most important thing to do with a conflict of interest policy is it's just disclosure. right? A lot of times when I've seen folks get into trouble under a conflicts of interest policy, it's not because there's truly a conflict of interest that's going to prevent an actual objective decision being made. It's because someone says, either didn't take the time to look through the policy or says, I don't think that's a conflict. And so I'm going to sort of make my subjective decision that that's not a conflict, right? Rather than going through really what is the disclosure and approval process from the rest of the board to make sure that there's not a conflict. And I think that's, although it can be uncomfortable and to a lot of folks, it raises the appearance of impropriety. It's actually the best thing to do is to over disclose in a situation like this. Any questions on that one? Again, I won't go through the provisions unless anybody would like me to, but I just thought it would be important to know what you should do when you've got, everybody has that little voice in their head that says, should I or shouldn't I? If you have that voice in your head, that means you should.
Yes.
Okay, 116, I've got version 2, which is the director conduct policy. Again, there are a variety of different elements to this policy, and I won't go through all of them. But they range obviously from the fiduciary standards that I talked about at the outset of my presentation, conflicts of interest, which builds in that whole conflict of interest policy, the general conduct, access to data, conduct with respect to fellow directors. I think that this obviously is, again, one of those fundamental baselines that directors have to comply with to be a member of the board of directors. And so it's just very important for directors to read it. And if there are questions, ask them. Any questions on that one or any other information I can provide on it? When I did this presentation in the past, we went over the anti-harassment policy that basically prohibits unlawful harassment. Harassment's a legal standard, but harassment based on any protected status under the law. So race, gender, ethnicity, religion, things like that. That's the fundamental provision of any anti-harassment policy. And it's just important to realize that it applies to directors too, right? I'm sure this would never happen, but the example I provided, right, where a director's out at the bar, maybe had a little bit too much to drink, makes a comment that's inappropriate in one way or another, that can lead to a harassment claim for the co-op, just like an employee making that statement to another employee. So that standard applies to directors as well. That's been the purpose of including that in this list in prior years.
Anyone have any questions regarding the policies that just went over with us, reviewed with us?
I don't have a question regarding the policies, but this is probably an appropriate place to address this. I plan to bring a motion forward next month that I'm telling you all now so we can think about it in an effort to not force a decision right away. But I plan to bring a motion forward next month to redistrict and go to 7 directors. How that would work would be the next opportunity that someone either resigns from the board or does not seek re-election for their district. So it could be 2 months from now, it could be 2 years from now, it could be 20 years from now, who knows? But as a group of individuals that keep touting our financial stewardship and responsibility minded nature, I think we're wasting members' money by having 8 directors. We are heavy directors for our size and our revenue compared to other RMCs in the state and the country. We've seen what having an even number of directors has done to our board. So the decision has to be made one way or the other. And the nominating committee would follow suit, would also fall under the redistricting. Whose ever district is eliminated essentially, that nominating committee person would be allowed to finish their tenure as an at-large member of the nominating committee. And then they could seek reelection as they would have anyway, but in the new district form, in the 7 districts instead of the 8. So it would not take away anyone's representation on the board or the nominating committee either way. So I'm throwing that out there. I want everybody to think about it. If you have questions about it or have ideas how we might implement that, I'd like to talk about it via email or phone over the next month. But I wanted to bring that up in open session so that we could all be thinking about it.
But you're looking at just reducing one, correct? I totally support that.
We gotta get to an odd number.
I totally support it.
I'm not asking for a decision tonight, but I'm gonna bring that motion forward in the details next month.
Is there any, what we should get to? Is there any information that we would need? Local. I don't think to speed it up as far as questions.
So the obvious and most complicated part of this probably is the actual redistricting, because the redistricting is a actual surveyed, very specifically defined area. All the districts are. So there are going to be costs. There are going to be legal fees to get this done. Decatur County RMC has gone through this process before. Not to say that that makes it right or appropriate that we should do it again, but honestly, guys, RMCs of our size do not have 8 directors. It's too many.
Most boards don't represent an even number
Okay, yeah.
for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Exhibit A, 2021 and 2022.
So anyway, think about it. We can have conversation before the next board meeting, but I'll have something to formally present next month.
I just have a general, how are the districts originally determined?
Population, I mean, the number of members. They tried to.
Evenly divided as you could be?
Correct.
That's correct. And if there were redistricting.
Basically a census
Relation.
type of deal.
But we know where all the meters are, right? So.
Okay. Next month. Anybody have any additional questions for Brian? So what I'm going to do now is close the open session temporarily and go into executive session. So Brian will stay with the directors. Everybody else can. Hallway.
Please. Good. Bye.
Yeah, I'm buying.
I don't remember how to pause this.
I will, I'm just gonna use a little voice.
Hey, Jeannie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
You mind popping off, and I'll text you when we get back on?
Oh, sure, yes. All right, see you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're out. Probably need another.
Session. Brian Garrison is going to remain with us with the election of the officers.
Thank you, Steve. So I'm glad to assist with this process. I think just a few, which I'm sure are routine matters for you all, haven't gone through this before, but since it's my first time with you all, probably best for me to go through those processes. We will hold elections. My understanding is 4 roles: chairman, vice chairman, secretary treasurer, and assistant secretary treasurer.
We have a secretary and then a treasurer, but I think for board agreement, we've combined that in the past. And so I don't know if we need to take care of that before we start. Are we going to have separate? Or are we going to combine that before we start?
So they're listed in the bylaws as those positions. Obviously, the secretary and treasurer are listed as different positions.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, but the practice has been for those positions to be combined into one. It's my understanding that it'll continue to be that way.
Okay.
Is there any dissent among?
We're good.
On that front? Okay. So we'll start with the chairpersons election. And there has to be at least one director nominated for each of these officer positions before that election's held. And then to be elected to each one of those positions, an officer has to receive a majority of the directors that are present at the meeting. There are 8 directors present at the meeting tonight. So the possibility exists, obviously, that there would be a 4-4 tie. There will be successive reballots until the board decides that it no longer wants to reballot in the event of tie votes. There is a provision in the bylaws that said no person may be elected chairperson for more than 6 consecutive one-year terms. It's my understanding that there's no one currently on the board who would violate that restriction of the bylaws. So Steve is current chairperson if he's elected again, or if there's no majority elected for chairperson, and there's a tie and there's a decision by the board not to continue to revote, then that means that that provision of the bylaws does not prevent Steve from continuing to serve in that role. That said, any questions, comments, anything else from the board before I hand out I guess first need is hand out the ballots and then take nominations.
Okay.
Okay, now that the ballots have been distributed, the floor is open for nominations for the position of chairperson.
I nominate Jeff Lawrence.
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations?
I nominate Steve Amrine.
Any other nominations? I don't believe that the nomination needs a second. Okay, cast your ballots, please, for either Jeff Lawrence or Steve Amrine. You can hold those and I'll come pick them up.
I slid it over there.
Gotcha, okay. Got 4 votes for Jeff Lawrence and 4 votes for Steve Amrine.
Brian, can I ask a question regarding the division? Obviously, there's no secret that there's a division on the board, and we went through this last year. Is there such a thing as doing co-chairs to maybe help bridge this division of our board? I'm just trying to think of some type of bridge we can come to, since it's an 4-4. I don't know, I mean, we can obviously do the votes again, but last year, the result was the same.
I think there is a process for that, Suzanne, but it would have to be outlined in the bylaws before time
Just
set.
curious of how to maybe bridge this.
Yes, I think could be one way to do it. Obviously, Jason has proposed an alternative way for doing that to happen at some point in time. There are a variety of ways to do that.
You need a motion to stop the polling.
If the board will, I will continue to poll until there is a motion.
I'll make you
Second.
And we're leaving it as a 4-4 tie.
Yeah, well, I mean, how many times you want? Yeah, I'm making a motion, we stop the polling, we stop voting.
I'll second it.
So there's been a motion to stop the polling on the voting for the position of chairperson. That motion's been seconded. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Any opposed? As a result of the tie by virtue of the provision of the bylaws, the chairperson will remain Steve Amline. Now move on to vote for vice chairperson.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I didn't think we were allowed to do the other officers, but we hadn't selected a chair. Because it could be other people eligible for those offices.
Review the bylaws before.
That's what took place last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just automatically Brian stayed and then Jason stayed as assistant.
Well, we didn't have a vice.
No, because it was never determined.
Word on it.
And what was the rationale for that, Jason?
The reason was that you don't know who's eligible, since they go in that order. Since you didn't select the first position, you technically don't know who's eligible for the subsequent.
And subsequent to that meeting, we tried the next meeting, if I'm not mistaken, did we not, to vote on
Yes, it was 2 meetings.
two meetings?
Yeah. So that was what we were told. We were.
But you said that Steve is automatically the chairman.
But
There's, right?
That's right. So each officer shall hold office until the first meeting of the board after the next succeeding annual meeting of the members or until successor shall have been duly elected.
we did select.
Qualified subject to the provisions.
That's right.
So there is nobody duly elected to the position of chairperson. So Steve remains in the position of chairperson under the bylaws.
And then everyone stayed in the same position because of the eligibility. And I'm good with that.
Okay.
What if I would like to step down as secretary?
I think if we've got someone at any point in time resigning from their position, then the board can go through and nominate and elect someone to fill that position. Because
If we don't have somebody else doing the minutes, like helping with the minutes, like we had an employee, or if we have a legal counsel that will do minutes, I do not want to do them anymore.
I totally support having someone else do the minutes. So I would support them doing it. You can stay in the role for now.
All right.
Who's that someone else?
Do you have somebody do the minutes?
You're asking,
I'm asking. It was Jeannie last,
Well-
and you stay in that position to review them.
correct. She would,
Still edit, like whenever Jeannie did them before, I edited what she did. I used my notes, compared notes with her. But she did a lot of the time consuming thing of typing everything up, and I just made
I would support her doing it.
it is a lot of time. And I've been admittedly not the best, especially here this spring. So I think it actually improved the minutes, so. as far as positions staying the same, you just look at them, approve them, and go on. And of course, the board would still review them and approve them.
Brian, would you fill out that form still? The caption?
I would still, yeah, I would write, I'd have, like I said, I'd still kind of do my stuff. Take my own little notes, make sure everything was.
I mean, Jeannie or I could do it. It's not that big a deal.
Is Jeannie willing?
She's not anymore. I mean, I'm willing to do it. Either.
Well,
one of them.
whoever,
I would, you guys are Jeannie. What's our HR manager?
if she's okay with it.
Okay.
I don't want
Good with
to
that.
say she has.
You're reviewing and the board still has to approve them.
Yeah.
So that step doesn't change.
But while she's doing other projects and things, someone else may have to do them. Unless we want to pay somebody to do them. She's got a lot of projects and things going on too. I just don't want to limit it to just her. I don't think, Brian, but HR doesn't have anything to do with necessarily taking notes, does it?
No, HR folks are typically seen as good notes. Effort for their positions, yes. That's an unfortunate association.
Do we need a formal vote on that then, or is it accepted?
I think you don't need a formal vote on that.
All right, so I guess the elections are.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Brian. If you need to get on out of here.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
We appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Safe travels.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
And we'll continue with the CEO update, Brett.
All right, so a few updates. Number one, we obviously completed our annual member event. I did participate in the ACES annual meeting. I did a write-up, but I didn't submit it to y'all. I went over it with my staff as far as some lessons or some things learned. It was actually I know Jason had talked about going at one point in time. This is going to be in Indianapolis, I think, next year again, and I would highly suggest if anyone is interested in power marketing. It was a great meeting. They didn't have, I mean, some of the speakers they had weren't like high-powered speakers as far as like motivational speakers. They're actually the experts in the field of power marketing. So it's the first time I've ever been to it. It's in Indianapolis, so I have to travel or get a hotel or anything. It was really good. I did complete my employee one-on-ones with everyone. We had this on the risk assessment and it created a project, but because of some of the things going on in the market, my team felt like we needed to work on that risk really quick. So we spent, I don't know, all morning putting together our emergency max gen curtailment plan. We had one in the past, but it wasn't real well defined as far as the steps have changed since the original curtailment plan was put together. So we do have a curtailment plan. It's probably not the best, but it's. And then last, we have an RFP, which is essentially a new company or new business. And I've been working on looking at what we call a definitive agreement. So that's where my time has been spent. Wanted to go through the project updates. Priority 4 is the meter pole replacement project. So our independent contractor has finished the original 10 that we put in the independent contractor agreement. We actually, Crystal got the sheets yesterday for those. So the next step is they will go into Brian's queue now. So we create a work order. They go into our normal work order process. I was pleasantly surprised that the majority of none of them of the 10, did we have to do the agreement where the member would own the pole? They all the ones that actually we had to do work to were meter pedestals. So essentially what we're waiting on is for them to do a meter pedestal, pull permit, get a green tag, then it'll work through our normal workflow for service.
What's the total number of meter poles?
Total number is 90 right now, but that'll change year over year. So we got the first 10, and when I say done, they've been looked at, they've been signed off by a member saying, here's what I kind of agreed to. So now they'll go into a work order and Brian, but what we did find is Brian's worked on 1 or 2 of these already. And Brian said that his work on it is nothing like if we didn't have this contractor doing it, because it's all been laid out with the members. So point is, we're making progress on that. We've been through the first 10. I'm going to be working on an independent contract because we only did it for this first 10. The timeframes are changed a little bit. So the costing in that contract is going to change. So I will be sending that out. I'll send a text to you guys once I get it put together for the next batch that we're going to do, so that you can take a look at that. Good news is we're moving forward. Pole replacements, we did award, I think it's been 2 weeks ago now, but we did award DNT the 2021 rejected poles. Essentially, we're waiting on materials, and we still do plan on having that completed by the end of the year. These are the 2021 rejects. Priority 6 is the MISO max generation process. Again, we created this project out of our risk assessment. I just talked about it a minute ago. We have kind of a plan in place. We'll still be working that project because what we want to do is identify by feeder, what feeders priority would we take down if we had to take one down. So there's still some more work to do there, but it's progressing. Priority 9 is tree refusal. So we finalized the legal letter that we're going to use to send to the members. Crystal's created a spreadsheet and a process. Those have been updated. And then we're going to be working on the list with the team. And Crystal, you guys got through 15 or 19 of those as far as got them off the list. And now we're just working the list down, right?
Yeah.
You know roughly how many we have on that?
It's like 164, so it's a lot, but right now we're looking to see if we have an easement on file.
Yep.
And we're almost done with those. We should be done with those tomorrow. And if we don't have them here, we're going to be going to the courthouse to see if we have them at the courthouse, and maybe we just didn't have a copy here for some reason, because that'll be a different letter. You know, if we don't have an easement on file, you can't really send a letter saying this. So there'll be different letters.
Yep.
Different letters.
Next project is the project 13 is the CT meeting. That's supposed to be metering testing. From what I understand, Crystal, we're going to be wrapped up with that this week.
This week, yeah, he called me today and he's got 13 locations that he's not been able to either get into because they have a gate, a locked gate. So we're going to have to call them tomorrow and get some time scheduled, or he couldn't find them. So we'll have to probably send Brian Am right now to show him where the locations are, but we'll be wrapped up week.
Priority 20 is the UTR tax repeal. So we have the system ready to go and Crystal's had it tested. So that will be in effect for August bills. So June, July usage, August bills. That will be, it'll show up as a credit on the bill per the law. We'll go through some of our company metrics here. So May's temperature was actually about 6.8% warmer than our 5-year average. So it was a fairly warm May. If you look at the cooling degree days, just shy of our 5-year average, and then heating degree days don't necessarily show up because we're getting to that point. Not a lot of people are running their heater. If you look at May, as far as energy purchase from Hoosier, basically we were just under about 2.5% under our 5-year average. And then if you look at demand here, we're basically flat with our 5-year average. If you look at the KWH sold variance to budget, so if you remember last year, we were about negative 3.5% away from where our budget is. We made up some ground this month. So with it being warmer, obviously people are running air conditioners more, and you see we've made up some ground there. So we're about 3.30. This is KWH sales for May and the different classes. Essentially, May actual usage sales to BU residentials was up. Commercial flip-flop from negative to positive. Industrial dropped below BU, and in transmission is still negative to BU, but improved immensely. So now we'll talk about storms. So as all of you know, we had the storm on May 21st. You can kind of see, obviously, it showed up as a major storm. So that one will be classified in our system as a major storm. And you'll see the effect of that here in a minute. We also had another blip here on May 28th, which was what we believe to be a raccoon in the sub here in the back. These are lost consumer hours. So obviously lost consumer hours are way above what our average was for May. And then number of outages obviously are way above 5-year also. For May, the lost consumer hours by cause, it was essentially power supplier, or sorry, major storm and then power supplier. Any questions on any of my stuff? Any questions? All right. Yeah. Clicker. Start with this.
Yep. All right, so we're going to start with the financial management plan discussion. Many of these, more or less, the ultimate goal of this is to get to what metrics does the board want to use to decide how we are doing and what direction do we want to go as a co-op. So because I personally don't really have a diehard opinion either way. I just need to know which way we need to go. So first off, we have, should future members share in the cost of today's plan investments? And as you can see, this is the survey that we put out. We have kind of all over the board to a certain extent, and you have the staff on the right as to the opinion as well. And then if you want to go to the next page. So the purpose of this question is to, the idea behind this is the industry leverages debt to spread cost to future members. So if you want, our facilities last on average 40 to 45 years. If you want to spread the cost to people in the future, you have to borrow the money so they pay back the debt on it. So the discussion is what percentage of plan improvement should be debt financed? And I don't know if you want to go through all these first, because everything does kind of tie together from there's mutually exclusive options. There's some things you can do. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. There's a mutually exclusive on some of these as to, if you want to do X, you can't do Y. If you want to do, I think from how I would put it is, it's like the math problem in high school. If you have 6 feet, but you can put it any 3 or 4 of your stacks, but you got to use the 6 feet. You got to pick and choose. So if you want to go on to the next one, Brett. So the next is, should current members share in the cost of today's plant investments? So this would be, how much stuff do we want to pay cash for today? And it looks like that is more prevalent than not. So, and this is, we use margin created from rates to pay for plant improvements today. So the more of our plant investments and improvements that we're going to do and pay cash for, the higher margin we have to run in order to have the money to pay for those. So the discussion here is also the what percentage of plant improvements should be debt financed and what margins are you willing to generate required to pay for plant improvements. And the next is how important is local rate stability for the REMC. So while we cannot control everything, especially since we are not the power supplier, we can control our local portion. This seems to be overwhelmingly, people think rate stability is important. So this here, the theory of the question, the higher the margin, the more stable and long-term our rates will be. The discussion is margin pays for these major items, long-term debt payments, planned improvements that are not financed, and capital credit retirements. Based on the financial plan and items above, that will calculate into the dollar amount we need. So based off how fast we want to retire our capital credits, how many of our planned improvements we want to pay cash for, and we're going to pay our long-term debt either way. So that's going to decide how much money we need to generate from margins today. Next is how important are frequent rate changes to reflect current costs. You can see the percentages there. And the theory here is how close do we set our margins, which can impact how frequently we'd need to change rates. If we try to keep our margins as low as possible, we could potentially have a major or minor storm or some other unplanned event result in a rate change throughout the year. Next is how important is it to have enough cash to pay our bills for 90 days? And this, there's varying as well. And there is how much cash should we have? How many days of cash do you believe covers our risk? So, and then the next question is along the same lines. It's how many days of cash should we have on hand in your opinion? So there you can see everybody's views. Same general theory. What legal liability are you willing to take on for capital credit payouts? And in general, it's less. So from what I have been told at the CFC and our ECA conference is anything over 30 years adds legal liability. They said if you do it in 30 and under, nobody's ever going to question you. So in this discussion is how many years do we want to hold capital credits? And here we have everybody's pretty much in the same general vicinity. So then the same question in general, and how many years should we hold members' money? And how many years do we want to hold the capital credits? Then we have how should we measure equity? Should we include Hoosier Energy or should we leave Hoosier Energy out? And there's the percentages there on how people voted. And the theory was Hoosier can skew our local numbers. How important is that, or should it be all inclusive? Do we set a range on local or total equity of what our goal is of where we want to be equity wise? And then here's what topics do you feel the board may need training on when developing a long-term financial management plan? And there's, I believe, everyone's responses. And then theory was how can management help and what training would you like us to look into? So in general, what I am trying to get at with this is if we have to do plan improvements every year or else our system will deteriorate. I think it's what percentage of that do you want to pay for in cash? What percentage do you want to finance in debt? That impacts who pays, the people of today or the people of tomorrow, as well as what margins you need today in order to pay that. Capital credits, the term that you wish to return members' money is going to be based off of how much you borrow and how much margin you run. You can pay back capital credits if you borrow a lot of money and hand it back to the members, or you can run a higher margin and pay it back faster too, or you can run. So in general, I guess I'm wanting to know what do you guys want for the long-term plan so that we can have targets to shoot for? So when I try to forecast into the future, I've got the targets that I'm aiming for. I mean, I can pick out whatever I want or think is best, but that doesn't do me. I don't want to go through the exercise of guessing what I think it could be, right? When it's you guys' decision on what the target is. I mean, I have my own opinions as to some of it based off talking to others, but in general, it's the board's decision of where we need to target, and tell me where you want to go. So I guess that's in general where it comes from. So I guess the first question was share of cost in today's plant investments.
Don't we need a long-term work plan first? That's the part I'm missing in all of this. We don't know what projects need to be done. We don't know what to target our newest cost of service study to support those projects. So how can we even determine how much money we need when we don't know what projects exist?
Do that calculation. But Matt and I talked through was.
So okay, I know.
Yeah.
So I've kind of sat on I've looked at how much our total utility plant is based off its age. I think we need to spend between $2 and $2.5 million a year, roughly, based off what it costs. That's my back of the napkin, and it's not going to get down to exact numbers, but that's the range that.
But that's why you need a long-term project list. So that can all be spelled out, and then you're not doing it on the back of the napkin. You shouldn't have to do that, Matt. That's all part of this process. And we haven't done that. But, doing a cost of service study, I don't know how we're going to justify what percentage rate increase we need because we don't know.
But if in general, we need $2 to $2.5 million a year of plant improvements, we know that pretty well, hey, this is the number we're going to have to target. Now, I don't know what the projects individually are. You're right there. That's not my call whatsoever.
But we do, so we have, we do a long range plan. We have a long range plan. We need to update the long range plan. But from the long range plan, then when you do a construction work plan, you do that construction work plan for a 5-year period. That's all they'll let you do. So you do, or it's actually a 4-year, but you can spread it over 5. So you do the construction work plan for the 5 years, and then you execute those. And you have to execute the ones that are in there because you can't go back and do those if you're going to borrow any money off of that the next round. So there is a process that we have to follow. It's required to follow. All our agencies follow it. It's a long-term, long range plan, which is, I think, about every 15 years. And then every, 5 years, you do a construction work plan. So actually what we had planned on doing was a construction work plan, here in the next, probably 2023, we'll actually reevaluate and create, and there's guidelines on how to do a construction work plan. It looks at outages, it looks at all the capacity and all the data, the age of the plant. What me and Matt were doing when we say back of the napkin is it's pretty easy to tell with the age of our plant. We have that on our balance sheet. We know what's the plant's worth. We know the age of the plant. We know how many miles of line we have. You can pretty easily calculate how much you would expect to be able to spend or have to spend, which that number is around $2 to $2.5 million a year. So what traditionally this RMC has done is we do a 5-year work plan, and then we sit out for 3 or 4 years while we're creating the next work plan. And we create the next work plan, we execute that work plan, but those are only built on 5 years. The numbers that Matt and I were talking about are pretty simple to put together just based on where our plan's at.
Aren't you asking for percentage here? You're not asking for dollar amount necessarily.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm asking for.
Doesn't matter whether it's $1,000 or
If
$1
it's
million.
2 million, so for the sake of moving on that, say we need to do $2 million a year in plant improvements. out of that $2 million, how much do you want to borrow? How much do you want to pay cash? Do you have a percentage you'd like to use? Do you have how do we want to pay for that? Do we want to pay for it in margins, borrowing, combination of them? I mean, I'm looking for when I go to do a forecast based off the $2 to $2.5 million in the long run, we're going to need X amount of money. Do we want to, the theory that was given to me is you borrow half and you pay half in cash. Because that means that the future members pay half, the current members pay half. In general, I think that's fairly conservative, but at the same time, there can be a range. What I'm asking for is what kind of range or target would you guys like to use? I mean, I would like I guess from my standpoint, I'd like to know going into the year that if we, so I'd like to know what the ultimate goal is going to be. If we know we're going to spend $2 million and I know at some point in the year that we're going to borrow $1 million or 50-50 on that plan. Well, I can kind of watch when rates go up or down and borrow the money versus wait until we're out of cash and then borrow the money. I guess I'm looking for that standpoint. Plus, do we want to have future members pay? I mean, or do we want to pay it all right now? I mean, that's I guess what I'm trying to get at, and that goes through with capital credits. Do we want to return members' money in 20 years, 30 years? I would say we definitely probably don't want to go over 30 based off what I've been told, but some people are less. I mean.
So our margins this year, I think, what was our budget? Like $400 and some thousand, which dramatically was reduced in the actuals, as you can see. $400,000. If we're truly wanting to not have future members that are going to use these assets, pay for it, then your margin's got to go way up, which means rates going to go up. So when
Necessarily to do 2.5 million, we've been able to do that the last couple of years without. Well, it's not because it hasn't been approved.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we haven't done any work.
But, well, I think there's more to it than just giving Matt those numbers. I think we have to have a long-term work plan and we have to know where the money's going to go.
All we're asking for is a percentage. Do we agree with the theory that either you charge everybody now, so you all are going to basically pay for the assets that are going to be used for the next 40 years. It's like renting a car. If you go rent a car, they can charge you $30,000 to rent the car. No, they're going to spread those across who rents it, who uses it. Because somebody's got to pay for it at the end of the day. So you either get it from the members today through margins and rates, so rates go up, and you don't borrow, which can be done.
I don't see rates going up if we're targeting 2.5 million.
Our margins right now, what is our overall margin right now? So this is the first year that we've gotten a good head start, not done. So we haven't even seen what's done yet, but a good head
The
start.
margins right now, year to date, are about $58,000. Now, part of that is because right away we're way ahead.
300,000 ahead.
And we had $150,000 for in outages.
Right.
So we currently year to date would be budgeted, we'd have $450,000 in margins.
And those got to pay capital credits.
But at the end of the year, and the tree trimming's already done, your margins are going to go up.
Yes, they should on that end.
So let's just say we hit budget. So 440,000's got to pay for capital credits payments, because that's not in your income statement.
Debt payments.
Got to pay for your debt principal. It's got to pay for plant improvements that you want to pay for in cash. So in other words, through rates. So you have to, that margin has to be generated from rates. So you can raise rates.
I guess what I'm looking for is more of a
Percentage.
of a guidance to set the plan for which projects fit this year. Because if we've got X amount of dollars coming in, well, this project is $2 million. What's the only project we're going to do? if we're gonna spend, I guess that's kind of where I'm going, is to have a more level versus this year we spend 4.6, last year we spent $2 million. It looks like to me going back historically, we have been and I guess I'm looking to try to, if at all possible, could we level that out more so that it was more of a, hey, we know we're going to spend X dollars this year. And it's no big deal if we spend 5 million one year and none the next, but we need to know that that is our plan, but that really can impact rates massively too, though. If one year you're going to spend $0 on plant, well, you're going to have capital credits out of this world. And another year you spend 5 million, well, you're not going to have any.
And a lot of that, with being, I agree, I want to try to level that out, but you're only going to be able to do it so much because you have to base it on RUS, and RUS says you build a 4-year work plan. And again, there's a process that you got to go through and you got 5 years to do it. So you essentially do and then it takes a year or two to put that plan together.
So with right of way, making it fluctuate that much with the work plan
Yes.
and the cost of service study anticipating to be done third quarter, wouldn't this be a percentage needed as we participate in the cost of service study? Not tonight?
We don't need this tonight.
I don't need this tonight. This
It's
is
just discussion.
this is discussion. Yes, you are
Like part of that
exactly right.
puzzle for the cost of,
Yes,
for the cost of service study. This is part of that puzzle.
Yes.
We need to decide then when we're developing new rates.
Yes.
Which is coming up next quarter.
Yes. The sooner we can tell him though, what our plan is from it will impact our rates. Yes, that is exactly what
We're doing this.
yes.
That's why we're trying, yeah.
We don't need it like right
No,
now.
I don't
No,
need an
no.
answer today.
Just something for us to keep continuing to think about.
Yes, I just wanted everybody to have an opportunity to, if you got any questions for me or discussion, I mean, I want everybody to leave here feeling like, hey, I'm okay with what I was told.
But I mean, I think what discussion, again, we need to have is this board needs to decide. Do you want higher margins, which means higher rates with low debt? Or do you want a mix? This co-op and most other co-ops do a mix. We're actually a little higher on the equity side, which means we probably range in the higher rates, right? So we're paying more with cash from members currently today. But you can't do it. You can't. We have to build a plan that me and Matt can execute. I mean, me and him kept talking. You want to give the example?
Yeah, we like I told Brett, I said, we would love to, I mean, everybody'd love to go on vacation every month of the year, pay their bills and not work, but that's not an option. So for us, our margin is our work. Paying our mortgage is our debt payments, and our capital credits is the money we have our fun with to a certain extent. I mean, that's not how I put it earlier. I'm trying to.
More flexible with our capital
Yeah.
than it is our bills. How's that? sound?
Yes. I mean, we got to pay our debt no matter what. If we don't pay our debt, RUS comes in and tells us how to do it. So that's not an option.
I thought we were
pay our debt no
required to do 30 years on capital credits. Am I misunderstanding?
No.
We could
You
do,
pick.
you can do less, you can, PVA doesn't.
I thought we couldn't go
at all, so
I thought we had to do that being under.
You have to, the law tells you have to allocate.
We just have done that.
there are people who get sued if they get out too far.
Right, that's what I thought we had to do 30 and under.
They told us 30 and they told me at that 30 and under, you won't get sued.
We just always have, okay.
Yes.
We're a little ahead.
We're ahead of that.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought we started back when I first started, you start with 30 years back and then work your way. So that's not even really an issue with us doing that.
No, we could shorten it if we wanted. I mean, that's an option too. If we felt like that, hey, we want to return money faster, we're going to,
Okay.
that's what I'm talking about. It's you guys' decision that if you say, hey, you know what, we want to return capital credits in 20 years and that's our goal and that's what the Decatur County REMC is going to do. Okay, then we can put that in our cost of service study and figure that out. If you guys say, hey, 30 years, 25 years, 28, just tell me what the number is and I can make it work.
So can I tell you, this is the percent I want to borrow, this is the percent I want out of margins, and here's where my capital credits I want them to be, and you can plug that into your magic computer and
I would say if you tell me what you want capital credits to rotate, how much cash you want us to hold on hand, and how much money you want us to borrow, yeah, I can pretty much tell you, okay, this is the margin we need to run.
And based upon margin, we can do.
Do what?
Figure out.
Percent of the work plan you want.
Yes, the percent,
Dollar amount.
not the dollar amount, the percentage.
Well, because my perspective has always been, we're borrowing it. We're borrowing it one way or the other.
Either get the
We're borrowing it from a lending institution or we're borrowing it from our members.
Yeah, that's
Serious.
effectively,
We don't have anything. It's not ours.
yes, we don't have a permanent source of equity, unfortunately.
We're going to pay it back in 20, 30 years.
Yes.
The case is.
That we pay somebody back the money one way or another. It's essentially though, at the end of the day, it all comes from members.
Right.
Does it come from the members today, members in the future? Realistically, some of it's from the members in the past. I mean, the people who have capital credits who've died are members in the past. We're still using their money. So it's who pays, but eventually, essentially, it's always the member. It's which member pays, past members, present members, future members. And what percentage do you want them to pay? So I guess that's what I'm asking for is who do you want to pay? And you guys have to tell us who you want to pay. And I'm all ears. Because then I can, like you said, then I can punch that stuff in and we can tell the cost of service study, we can figure out, okay, we're going to need X dollars to do this.
So what you're looking for is those variables from us as a board,
Yes,
a consensus of what those variables are.
Exactly.
yes.
Well, it's not 0 and it's not 100.
Can we get that?
Narrowing it down.
90 and 10.
The reason we asked the whole
think we'll
liability
like-
question on capital,
Price is Right.
trying to set like that top end.
Spin the wheel like Price is Right, whatever it lands on.
I mean, it's kind of interesting because if you look at our equity, total equity, we're not that far off of everyone else. We're a little high. But then if you look at just our local equity, we're 50-50, right? So we're about what people try to target, which is 50% of the people that are using the assets today.
And I guess I would be curious to why you guys felt, because I like local because I mean,
I know we were.
my comment was the one, we got 1/18 control. I've been a minority shareholder before and boy, it ain't fun.
Well, and my comment was, I don't feel like there's a lot of risk at Hoosier currently. So, I mean,
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
there was a comment on there that said, this isn't real money. And actually it came from a staff member on that section, which is fine. But we just got almost $1 million in May. That was real money.
My comment was that we don't have control, so.
So it is real money, number one. Number two, I think the question becomes, are you counting on that? That's why when we go into the budget time and you guys have a debt service coverage ratio in there, I don't agree with that. Because that ratio includes that retirement money, or it includes the allocation. And that's not what we're getting. We're getting the retired funds. So an MDSC is what we're actually receiving in cash. I feel like that's a lot better metric than an allocation.
Some of the metrics are bad.
But that allocated number, I agree with you, is, there's a time to use it and a time to not use it. But at the end of the day, that is our equity in that company.
Yes.
We're going to get that one way or other. It's just like the discussion you just had. If you're not paying that back in 30 years, somebody's going to be knocking on the door.
Yes.
I mean, it's on your balance sheet. It's real.
So it is real money.
Well, I didn't say it wasn't real money. I just said we don't have control of it.
That's just my
I guess I've been squeezed as a minority person before, so I
So we wanted to answer any questions that you all had on this because I think, there were some comments that it really goes to the three-legged stool. These are usually it's contradicting. So it's not possible. It won't.
You can't pay back all your capital credits, run zero debt and zero margins.
It's not going to work.
You can't.
Mathematically.
You have to have, if you're going to pay faster capital credits and not borrow money, you got to have higher margins. If you're going to pay high capital credits and run low margins, you're going to borrow a lot. If you're going to, mean, it's what do you guys want for us going forward? And my hope is that it will be something we try to stick to as a more or less guardrails that, hey, stay between this.
But this has this has some variable components in it though.
It
Also,
does.
this is not I want it to be 50% for 5
Oh,
years.
no.
Range.
Because we're
It could be a range.
still, even though rates are going up, we're still in a historically low interest rate
Yes.
environment. Maybe in those kind of periods, it should be higher.
Yes.
Maybe
If interest was 15%, I would be jumping up and down. If you
Right.
only borrow 100% of it, I'd say,
Sure.
yeah, I don't want to do that.
But we already determined the number's not 100.
Yes, why not? You know what I mean, though. I mean,
He wasn't.
and part of it is too, if you set the percentage there, you don't ever miss the high, you don't ever miss the low. You spread your risk out of, if you use members' money and that turned out to be the wrong choice, well, hey, you used a percentage of it, you didn't use all of it. If you borrowed a whole bunch of money and hey, that was the bad choice, well, at least you didn't use all of it. That's why I'm looking for some sort of a balance.
The cost of members' equity is more expensive than we can borrow.
Always is.
So their money's more expensive than what we can access. I've been a proponent of paying back more capital credits because I feel like we shouldn't be using as much of their money because our equity number is getting high, in my opinion. But we haven't had our equity training deal that we were going to have yet, but I saw that it's coming maybe in August.
I think that's critical. I know for me personally.
Wasn't that on
this
your
conversation's really, I need that.
I think
We don't have anything planned.
It's on the,
I saw that somewhere.
we talked about it a lot. I mean, I thought that was coming and it's on the action item list. Anyway, I think that would be important. I put that on my list. Overall equity management philosophy and training, Matt Raver, to be determined. Start discussion in May, board meeting, plan to keep discussing this in June. Maybe that's,
this is,
maybe this is.
this is part of that.
Okay.
This is the discussion, yes. I mean, it's how everything interplays is the. So I'm looking for guidance on what to plug into the 10-year forecast, so it's not something that just goes straight in the trash.
Is there training that you,
There's a whole course on it.
yeah, I know, but do you want us to set something up? I mean, we're looking for, what do you need? Ultimately, we got to set these goals. And this board needs to tell, I mean, there's a fundamental theory on who do you want to pay? Do you want higher margins? And this will play into our cost of service stuff.
Yes.
eventually.
That's sooner than later.
Yes, we need a decision before we set the rates because it's going to impact how the rates get set. Otherwise, if we set our rates too low, well, we're going to have to go back and raise them or change them or.
Well, this has been something we've been kicking the can on for almost 2 years. We keep talking about it. Board needs to set this. The board hasn't been forced to because we haven't been getting work plan done. So we haven't really, we haven't borrowed any money.
Right.
So now we're at the rubber meets the road and we need to make a decision.
I mean, the 5 years I've been here, we've had plenty of cash and it hasn't, we haven't had to deal with it. It's because we're not getting our work plan.
Yeah.
We're getting, I mean, if you guys see the numbers, it's getting there now. We've got a process and our mechanisms are working. We're getting there. So this isn't going to be something that we can just sit on.
So that's why I say this plays into everything else, because this is the overall theory of how much do you borrow? When do you borrow? And what percentage and what's your rationale for it too?
What's heavier for me right now, it's over 50% because of interest rate environment.
Carl, what do you think?
Just as I do my financials, my little business I'm doing is that I try to keep my equity as high as possible. But in the same token, like I said, you'd like to have some money back you're paying right now too. So and then you don't want to stick your grandkids or your kids involved in it either.
Oh, and that's why you guys need to tell us where we're gonna, what's fair in another state or another country, or what's fair for the co-ops in Kansas might not be what we want to do here. I mean, we have to decide locally how we're gonna handle that. Now, the 30 years, if we start to get way out of bounds, though, they're gonna smack our hand. So, I mean, there are guardrails set up more or less. People have sued if you get over that, but if we decided we wanted to pay our money back for 5 years, we could do that. I mean, we'd have high margins.
Negative rating.
Bill rates.
That would be a negative rating.
Extraordinary.
It would be a very negative rate impact, but if you had 2 months your bill paid for, what's the difference, right?
But I mean, we almost asked the question, where do you want to be on rates? Do you want to be in the higher rate range, but be able to say that we're debt free, or do you want to be in the lower and have a good split? That's a theory question. You can't do both.
I mean, to your question, Jeff, about what plan and work we're gonna do, that's not my decision. That's the PSEs and the people who, the engineers are gonna tell us what we have to do based off our outage data. And I'm not gonna presume to tell them what needs done there, because I'm gonna get myself out of my league if I do that. So this for me is, and that does play a part in, if they come back and tell us, hey, your system, you're really gonna need $4 million a year to keep up, well, that would throw this out of whack. And they may tell me my number. I mean, I took our plant's worth $50 million. It's 1,000 miles. And then I've calculated out what stuff cost years ago versus what it costs today, and got to, hey, I think it's somewhere in this range.
We know our plant our plant, I mean, you can look at depreciation. Our plant is rapidly aging. And we came up with that $2.5 million. That might be way off. It could be a lot higher than that. I mean, the only reason our skates look probably halfway decent is because we're doing a lot of tree trimming. But I can tell you, not that far away, a co-op had a plan. And the old CEO told me and Matt the story of, they bought copper line from up north because it was cheaper. They
bought used
copper wire from up north because it was cheap. They hung it and never replaced it. And literally it got to the point where it was falling down every night. Their lineman called in and said, what do you want me to do? They sat out there with a box of clamps. When it falls down, they put it back up. So, I mean, I don't think an option is.
So that eventually comes out too. If you do get to where you're having more, there is a balance between construction and fixing what you got.
Yep.
And there are times when rebuilding, well, it's just like anything else. I mean, sometimes the best way to fix the house is a track hoe. It's sometimes the best remodel.
But I think there's also some life cycle management type stuff. Gordon and I were just talking out there, the substation right across from us from the local IOUs being completely rebuilt, probably a multi-million-dollar project because it's past its useful life. So I don't even know that they're going to let it fall.
What do you guys think? Need some training before this decision's made?
It'd be interesting not to work backwards, keep our rates the same. Go on to the $2.5, $3 million projection, which is just an estimate, and what percentage we would need to borrow to maintain that. Just an equation going backwards. If we want to try to keep our members' rates the same, estimate the $2.5 to $3 million needed for projects.
And know what the debt payments are.
And know what the debt is.
Know what the
and what percentage we need to borrow.
So we did that.
I like working the backwards way to come up with that, just out of curiosity.
So that's going to tell you basically a margin number you need to have. Then the question of how much of it comes from borrow versus, and I think Jason's point, even though interest rates have increased. Historically, they're still low.
I believe.
They're lower than our blended average still, yes.
So that study was done at one point in time. It's been years ago, and I believe the number was like 60%.
Yeah, if we could work off current rates with that right now, and what we have right now coming in average cash flow as part of the puzzle, not the whole equation, but part of that puzzle. And then just, just kind of come up with that equation backwards.
This has been a very long time ago, but it seemed to me that we had that spreadsheet on the screen and we were actively plugging. It was a 10-year forecast model, was a spreadsheet, and we were putting numbers in there to come up with some, I mean, do you have that? Do you have one? I mean, we could accomplish exactly what she's talking about.
I'm just out of curiosity. That's what I
Here,
would
we
like to
could
see.
work through that.
We have it, but there's so many variables that we don't have answers for.
Yeah, but I mean, we can do that here.
Yeah, can you just do an
Some of-
average,
some of
average
those
like
things
the
aren't
end of
gonna
May,
change.
average to the end of May, average to the end of June, take what our current rates are, divided by that 2.5 million, 3 million, and then keep our cash flows in consideration, not as the main part of the puzzle, but as a consideration.
Right.
And then come up with what that percentage is that we would need to borrow to maintain our rates to be the same with that 2.5 to 3 million.
Okay. We're gonna need the cost of service
That's the cost of service
to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, couldn't you just plug in I mean, I'm not saying in concrete like the 10 Commandments, but just some kind of average of what it would be through the end of May if we would do that in 2022. Here's what would have been. Since we have,
Trying to think exactly how I go about doing that with, give me a second here. I'm running that through my head here.
I'm running it through my head too. I might send you an Excel spreadsheet with some equations and you can just kind of fill in the blanks. Because
I'd appreciate that.
we have the numbers. We have the actual numbers to go off of. So then we're not walking into it blind. We actually can say, hey, okay, approximately
Yes. Well, and we,
44 to 50.
when I say 2 million to 2.5 million, that's,
Could be way off.
it could be off.
Just plug in, that's 3 million.
Yes, you gotta start somewhere.
I mean, it's just an estimation, but to keep our members' rates the same
Yes.
and then to
So
borrow
what
what the difference
percentage would we have to borrow to keep the
Yeah.
rates the same and maintain everything?
and review current cash flow and keep that average, which I know, it fluctuates, but so does everything else.
Right. And that's part of it too, is what level of, and that plays into it. What is a reasonable margin to shoot for?
And maybe it'd be more beneficial to go from May of 21 to May of 22 versus just January through May.
Is everyone good with the fact that the reason we haven't put together a 10-year forecast with all these numbers is you're shooting darts. I mean, we did that with the LE. That's what the LE is. It's.
But it doesn't give us that percentage with that puzzle of what, let's keep the members rate the same.
So
$3 million worth,
rate's the same,
yeah,
the rate's the same. What do you?
let's say $3 million, the work plan you were talking about.
Okay, so 3 million work.
That's a high estimate. Take the average cash flow as a consideration on the monthly,
Maintain the average cash flow, Suzanne?
maintain over 12, the average.
The average is
Average, this is all average from here.
Capital credits, what year do you want to shoot? How many years?
25.
Yes.
25, 2025.
25, all right.
Let's keep it under 30. And then just say to maintain this going forward, we need to borrow X.
Okay.
I mean, I know it's an estimate, but at least it's
Right.
an equation that we're not just,
Right, no, I get that.
thank you.
The
That's not too much.
other thing that'll vary is gonna be weather and that will, unfortunately, the weather completely dictates your revenue.
But you can't, that's God's, we can't
Yeah,
control that.
But it could,
That's
it could
what you
throw
have
this
there,
average.
Right, but that would give us at least, here's what happened last year. Here's what we,
Yeah.
That's where the average cash flow is very same. We assume that it.
yeah, I'm not worried about, God events or interest rates because we have no control over that.
Right, we
But
don't.
we do have some control over looking at what the past records have been and then making a good decision based on that.
Well, your last work plan was 9 point what over 5?
9.2.
So you're just short of.
That we did kind of 9.2. And our rates were built and everything based upon borrowing 4.2. Never did any of that because we never get any of it done yet.
Thanks for doing that. Seeing that would visually versus just saying, 48.7% is what we need to borrow.
Right. No, yeah, this will give me, I can plug this in as I guess the last question of that is what level of cash do you want us to shoot for? Because that could impact too, what we need to do And we can always borrow, I guess, to get to that. So I guess that doesn't really impact. I would like to have that discussion as well while it's,
We asked that.
How many days of cash flow needed?
yes.
60, 90?
Because that impacts us today and tomorrow as to what we need that impacts that 3.2 in the budget too this year even, or could.
So everybody's right around that 30 to 90 days. I mean, right now we're like 8, 9 days.
So we have every month, we spend out about $3 million. So we have roughly 8 to 10 days cash to 15 days cash every month.
But isn't without that short term what we needed it for? In case we do need it, we have a short term.
We do have a short term, and that could be the answer that, hey, this is why we aren't going to run, we're cash costs money. Cash is an expense to hold cash on the balance sheet. It costs money. But if you run out of cash, you're dead meat. So what is the level of risk we're willing to take there? And we do have that $4 million, yes. And I do not discount that one bit. I don't count that as part of it, but I know it's there.
It just sounds better to have that when you say we only have 8 to 9 days out. It's not, we have other means if we have.
We do have other means, yes.
When was the last time that was accessed? Do you even know? I mean,
It's been years since we pulled that money, yes.
So,
I think in general, that money is, from what I have, my personal take is that money is there if really something goes real wrong.
Yes.
We as an REMC, I think historically, something went wrong if we got into that money.
or an act of God that we need it.
Yes,
Yeah.
tornado went through.
It's not about
$2 million. No, we don't.
Historically, we haven't done that.
Yes. So I guess from that standpoint, really, we spend about $3 million a month in cash. So do we want to keep 3 million in cash? Do I have 15 days in cash?
Change my answer. This question.
No, you already answered it.
So
Change it.
Nope, can't change it. I'm just-
30 days.
I think what we're doing is working.
and that's,
With Hoosier, and we're maintaining that cash flow and the balance is used to prepay Hoosier.
Have we ever not been able to prepay Hoosier?
Oh, that we've never used to prepaid user. When we get into
Since Matt's been here?
I mean,
we've started
Done it for
paying them.
years, probably.
we haven't done any construction work plan.
But again, the cash flow should still balance because again, we got payments early and we used that money to prepay Hoosier. So it was a win-win.
In general, we have prepaid Hoosier for years.
Since you've been here at least.
More or less, if there was ever extra money, Johnny would always send it over.
We've paid something on the user bill.
Yes, we normally don't have enough money to pay 100% of it.
Right, but it's-
I mean, we pay as the money comes in. So what you guys see at the end of every month is our highest cash we get. I mean, as soon as Hoosier's bill comes in, we pay as much down to keep that, because I mean,
And that's smart business.
I feel like that saves us money. I mean,
They don't have to have extra cash to do
Yeah, you will.
you'll have to have some, but
where we're at right now.
right now, no. So that's the question is the money that we want to target at the end of the month. I guess that's what I'm asking more so than anything else is what is the target at the end of the month? And keep in mind, the end of the month is our highest cash day. And that's kind of what I'm asking for here is what is the highest day's cash? How much do you guys want to have on hand? I think 3 million is probably too much. But I don't think we need a full month's cash. I was the 30 days at the most. So,
You said 3 million is a monthly expenditure. right?
yes. I mean, Jenny and I talked and we thought if we targeted at the end of every month, we want to have $1.5 million. That allowed us to prepay some of Hoosier, plus we could cover everything outside of Hoosier for a month. Because as you said, Jason, Hoosier they will, if a tornado rips through Decatur County and wipes out our building and we don't have everything going, Hoosier's not going to shut the power off to us tomorrow because, but we do want to be able to pay our contractors and other people because they may turn and leave if they're not getting paid. So that there, I guess, is,
Right now, you're what, about 2 million?
right now, we have about, at the end of this month, we're the end of this month, we have about 1.3 million. So weeks. Yeah. We can pay everything but Hoosier with that. So,
Right away has a lot to do with that too.
Yeah.
The right away is still a big piece of that.
oh yeah, yeah, that's
So I think-
money coming out.
That's when you say it goes like this,
Well, and once that's.
right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, once that's,
Was that an original 7-year cycle on that? 9, where are we at on that?
It's last year.
Oh, it's
so that's really gonna help the,
Hopefully.
theoretically.
Well, and it should free up cash.
Unless we're getting a lot of projects in, then we'll all be happy because that was our discussion in November.
See the numbers?
Yeah.
Scary how much cash is.
So, but that's the other thing. So
So do you have enough to start working on now? You've got a little guidance?
I do have some guidance. Yes, I can.
Thank you, Matt.
All right. I guess next we have the financial update.
Yeah.
So have it on the screen. All right. All right. First off is balance sheet. The total other property and investment, that is the Hoosier Energy Special Capital Credit Retirement, which Suzanne beat me to this
No,
afternoon.
I'm sorry, that's why I did it by email, but you're good. I just want to make sure.
No, that was totally, I was glad you asked. And the increase in cash is mostly due to we got Hoosier's money, so. Next, we have our operations. So we have our operating revenue. And our power costs are both below budget. Which means that our tracker and everything is following as well. The tracker picked back up a bunch this past month, so it really helped our gross margin close back to be really close to what we were shooting for. Over half our kilowatt shortfall is IPT. Our control and you can see we're over budget in controllables, which we've talked about already, is the maintenance department due to right of way and outages. I mean, that's where that's showing up at. And then lastly, that D is the same thing. It's showing up everywhere. So any questions on either one of those? And then lastly, we have our cash, which you can see where we're at. You can see down at the bottom too, that's our disbursements for the month, the $3 million. That's in general about where it stays. So a little higher, a little lower, depending on how much the Hoosier bill is.
So do remember, Matt and I was talking about this earlier. If you look at, you guys go to the statement of operations detail down on, and I should have probably put this in we should have probably put this in your slide, but if you look at the sales of electricity where we flip-flopped, you guys all look at that. That flip-flop power cost kind of
Maybe
stays.
page 2 of operations in their total order.
Yeah, it's page 2. Sorry, I should say that. No, yeah, page 2. And then the gross margins went really high. Well, the reason we have, if you look at the cash flow, positive cash was because we're picking up. So in May is when that tracker changed for Hoosier, and it changed for the entire rest of the year. And it's going from a negative, it was supposed to be negative all year as of January. So our tracker was picking up a credit every single month. It's changed like by a lot, right? Because of all the things we've been talking about. So my point is that gross margin above budget is going to get sucked up here later on once Hoosier's tracker picks up to that higher level. I'm not explaining it very well, but point is that it's a little.
Hoosier's tracker went from negative to positive, and where ours does follow theirs. So, but we're a month behind. So last month we were behind. This month we're catching up. So,
But also ours is projecting their Q3 and Q4, which are much, much higher than our Q1 and Q2 from Hoosier. So it's not only picking up last month, it's also picking up for the rest of the year.
Power bills are gonna be higher.
Power bill, yes. It won't look like that for the rest of the year, is my point.
All right, next. All right, next we have the plant investments. So I added some things and changed some things and asked, more or less, we got a lot more invoices in, as you can see, the jump from last month to this month. Do you want to go to the next slide? Because that's I guess you didn't have that. So some of the changes, I made changes to the LE. The year to date, we also, so I added at the very bottom, the WIP, which is things that have been started, that have been paid, that the work order is not closed. So they're in process, but they're not done. So we have roughly $2.7 million that we have done the work on so far this year. So we're moving along. So, one change you'll note is I changed the work plan projects 2021. That is now negative. The, based off how the data comes through on for our loan and how we record it for RUS, it gets coded to certain accounts based off how stuff is. So you'll see that when we did this, the Sardinia job was in there. And now that's Sardinia job, and I didn't move it all back up there because I felt like it needs to stay where it was from a standpoint of it just needs to be there to follow along. So that some of that money is in the pole replacements 2021, and some of it also is in the miscellaneous replacements and additions. So those are over because of that. Meter pole replacement, I plugged a number in. That was my wild guess. I hope nobody holds me to that because I just picked a number out of thin air because we're doing those. And I felt like, hey, I need to have somewhere here where I show that that's going to happen. The rejected polls that were rejected in 2021 that are started now in 2022. I talked to Brian. He said that they got a shipment of polls this week. And they are starting to build those on the ground, but they haven't set them yet. And based off that quote that we got back, I don't think we're going to probably be quite as high as we had thought there. So I took some out there. Meters and transformers, that's the big one. More or less, when we did the budget, we use average cost because on everything historically, we use historical costs. And those pretty much, we haven't bought some of the 3-phase in a while, and they're more expensive than the average. So as Brett talked about in April, the cost to buy new 3-phase transformers was out of this world. So we priced remanufactured ones and
We went with a lot of the remanufactured. So, well, and again, if you go back into the April board meeting when I talked to you guys about this, originally in April, we were thinking we were going to have to buy new. We ended up finding some refurbished. So if you look at this budget as far as distribution, we're about $500,000 heavy, right?
Yes.
But all that is the meters and transformers, and it's all part of this risk buy that we did. We weren't able to buy the quantities that we originally put in the budget just because of the cost. Were so high, but we believe we've mitigated the risk and we've got everything, but there's a few 3-phase transformers that we still have to order.
Yeah, there's the one company that was gonna provide them with returning our phone calls.
Means they don't.
Yes. Any questions on this?
You're good?
And just so everyone knows on right away, so G4, which is out of this back, we're 95% done. The Westport one, we're 85% done. We have not started center sub yet, but that's the small one. And then our tickets, tickets, there's about 164 left on that. So right now we're tracking to be about maybe 20-ish thousand under budget. Some of that could get picked up by some of this tree refusal stuff too. We're gonna be sending out all these, and there's some of them from that won't be picked up on bids, current bids. I don't know how much that could be, but point is I think we're in really good shape and right away. Doesn't look so pretty in the financials, but
But as we're looking, the right of way is going to even out for the budget.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, it's going to be
It's a timing issue.
Is paying it early.
Yeah, we're moving faster than,
And that's great.
essentially what we do is we just take whatever we approve in the budget and we divide it by 12.
Yeah, but I hope we start changing that so we can see where the cash is going to flow and start really working towards a budget.
It's gonna be hard because we could probably do a better job. But depending on how many crews they have and where storms are at, they won't commit it to a time.
it's tough to set that because we don't have control. If it was our people,
But you at least ask. If they're going to come in the first 6 months versus the last 6 months, it's a big hit on cash.
And we did ask. I mean, that's what.
And they're here working, which is great, but
We'd actually been a little bit farther, but we had storms up north that they went on. So it just depends.
and if come July, a hurricane hits down, much of anything. It's just. Well, next is me again.
This was just discussion on your.
Yes, I emailed that I want to borrow money. Interest is still cheap. Based off how we're coming along in our work plan, we're gonna need the money. And capital credits get paid July or August. We'll need money to pay those.
So this email you sent is dated June the 2nd. Overall, it said, this is what you wrote. Overall, 3%, over under around 3% was the target. What is it now?
It was 3.4 today. It's been as high as 3.6, as low as 3, or a little under 3 one day, I think it was.
So we fumbled away some more interest money this month.
I'd say the real impact is going to be in the future months, but yes.
Or were we borrowing money we really didn't need? That's what I'm looking at it from.
You're going to need it sooner or later.
Well,
I
with
mean,
the
why not lock it
financials we
down?
received and how they changed this month, I don't know what we need. We had an $820,000 change in 1 month. The LE. So,
We're getting some work done.
no, there's a breakdown in communication. We should have known that last month.
I think we
We
did.
shouldn't have to get the bills in to know what our expenses are going to be. Or at least ballpark. These are projects.
That's why you got that line right there, work in progress.
And I appreciate that. I wish we'd had it last month.
Talked about how much we had.
We knew last month that there was mistakes in the plant investment sheet, and we didn't discuss it as a board. And I'm good with, I just want to go forward, but I want to have accurate information to go forward on.
Mistakes and plant investment sheet.
I would,
Polls. And where you were charging them and where we were coming up for money with the meter polls. So, but anyhow, I just want to go forward.
and
Wait a minute though. So I don't agree with that.
Well, if you pull out these two sheets, there's a $500,000 swing. There's a total of $821,000 difference
So
in LE.
the account is going to he can't book it into our financials until that work order is closed. That's how accounting works.
Okay, but we budgeted 4.6 million and we're now targeting 5.1 million and we find out after the fact.
that's not after the fact. You're holding me to an LE, which is a best guess.
No,
And that's what LE is. It's every month I sit down, and last month I didn't sit down and spend tons and tons of time in it because we had talked about presenting financials on a less regular basis. So that was, I'll freely admit that I didn't put near the time into it last month as this month. I'm not going to tell you I did because I didn't. This month, I knew a bunch of work was going to get done. The invoices were coming from all those poll jobs that got done. Once I had all those, I have the actuals in, then I start hunting for, okay, what else could be out there? The LE is a moving target. And I know I've said that before because it may come back tomorrow. I may go back in there and Chris tell me, you know what? The engineering firm called, says we're not going to get X done. Nix this project. This is my best guess, realistically, the week before the meeting. Now, am I going to get it right every time? Oh, no. I will promise you it will change. And as I get more years of doing this, I bet I get better at it. But
I suggest we get rid of the LE. This LE does nothing for a board. No other co-op shows an LE. An LE is a complete throw the dart at the target.
we asked to get rid of the LE a long time ago.
I have no idea. Can we get rid of it?
So we did get rid of most of it.
Then that will clean this all
I
up.
believe our last conversation, we were gonna get rid of the LE and use actuals compared to the budget when it came out, wasn't it? That was our last.
So then what the mistakes and the things that you were talking about, which is very offensive, is the LE numbers. Nothing to do with the
No, when you compare the pole replacement in May of $106,810 to the pole replacement in June of $556,000, that's a one hell of a swing.
That's because those were the work orders that were closed last year. They finished the project and closed the work orders. Those are actuals.
It's not where it was budgeted.
What do you mean that's not where it's budgeted?
Matt just said he moved poles down.
I put polls with polls because at the end of the day, RUS codes them to code 606.
And I'm good with coding it, but I think we should know that up front.
I mean, at the end, it's the same money. It's just where it's, I guess for me, we need to, and this is something for next year, that instead of having pole replacements, regular pole, it just needs to have pole replacements. One line and be done with it. That way there's less confusion. I feel like there's whether the money gets coded to distribution work plan 2021 or distribution work plan projects, it's still money that went out on the plan. And whether it's a pole or a transformer or something else, it's all about this. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's all plant investments. I mean, I feel like you're right. That did change, but it's how I coded it in here. I mean, if I I can code it wherever, if this is me typing this in a spreadsheet. I could type it somewhere else. It's not going to change the end number. I mean, where I put it in the spreadsheet doesn't matter from a,
2 years ago in the budget, we wanted to move this to the actual codes, right? There is no a pole replacement's a pole replacement's a pole replacement. It doesn't matter if it's a rejected pole or if it's part of the Sardinia construction work plan project. That's how we wanted the budget. That was not going to fly because we wanted transparency on each one of these. My suggestion is you get rid of the LE and you get rid of these special things where we're actually having to
I think
manually
there's,
put things in stuff and let the system drive it.
I think there's some confusion created by the spreadsheets, the amount of detail that's in there sometimes doesn't necessarily how stuff flows out of the system. I don't like, I type things in a spreadsheet for you guys every month. I'm hoping that Mosaic, when it's running, I can hit a button and the system dumps it. And then it's straight out of the system and there's no.
So would there be less confusion if under the distribution plant, we have one pole replacement and remove the LE?
Yes, I would, going forward. I mean, this year,
I think last year the concern was how much was getting done or not getting done, but now that we obviously see with the numbers, things are getting done. Is that?
I mean, I would like to have it coded just straight off how the lines are on the loans. I mean, how our accounting system was created by USDA in the 30s when they started the Rural Electrification Act, and they tell us where everything goes.
So regardless where it's coded, the
Yes.
2.7 million is correct.
Yes, that
The
is,
3.2 million or the budget as needed is what's going to cover. We're continued to keep putting money into our plan investments.
I think we will need every penny of it, yes.
So your email here says forward.
We talked about prior about borrowing money to potentially have for that loan that reprices the next year. We can use that money to prepay Hoosier faster, and Hoosier's paying better interest right now. They're just, within a month or two, Hoosier's going to be paying as much interest as we're paying if we borrow the money. So with the rates are going up, we're going to come out even on that.
If we borrow the 3.4 of the work plan, make it up to 4 million, maybe prepay the Hoosier, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying use the 800,000 to prepay Hoosier, or
That's a wash then.
And then basically we're going to be to the good on that.
that money's just, it goes in, goes out. And it's once they raise rates again, it's going to be even.
And then the 3.2 is needed primarily for the plan investments.
Yes, we're going to need that to pay our capital credits back and finish out our plan for that.
That was the number from the budget, right? The
And that
3.2.
was our goal during the budget, is to get to that point that we need to borrow money to get all this stuff done. So
And the transformers number I put in here, that's if everything comes in this year. That ain't going to happen. I mean, some of that's going to carry in the next year.
So as of this minute, 4 million at 3.4%. As of this minute, I know it could change in the morning, but
Yeah, that's what it is. I can tell you how much, if you look at the 10-year treasury, you can pretty well get a pretty good idea what it's going to do the next day. And right now, the 10-year treasury is at 3.2. So it's gonna be a little above that. So it'll be it'll be 3.3 to 3.4 would be my guess based off how it's historically done.
You can execute this by a phone call tomorrow. And you're done.
No, I gotta send in how much money we want. I
understand that, but I mean, you can get this executed right away.
I can start on it, yes. I can't promise you they're gonna guarantee me the funds tomorrow.
But you've got the approvals already.
The 219s are approved. I just have to send them all what they have to lock us in.
so you can lock in the rate tomorrow.
I don't think there's any way we can get that. No.
I don't know exactly how that works
There's a
100%
process.
yet. So I've never done it, so. They said, well, you need to know how much money you want to borrow first. So I figured until you guys said yay or nay, I had to.
Unfortunately, we're dealing with the government. So I don't remember how long it took on that 470, but it's not a day.
I'm sure they won't have it tomorrow.
I was just meaning the,
yes, but I can start on
it may
it.
fluctuate, but the rate's gonna predominantly stay approximately
I hope.
the next few days unless something else happens to go up.
I had one day it moved up 25 basis points the other week when stuff went crazy that one day. I just about shocked when I saw that. Then it came down the next week. So it's been as high as 3.6 and yesterday it was 3.3. So it's moving. So it's been moving up though.
We already approved the 3.2,
But you have to approve the borrow.
I understand
If
that,
needed.
but what the real question is the additional 800. Right?
Yeah, and my idea with that was we talked about when CFC reprices the next year, having some of that money sitting there. I mean, I don't care where we get the money. It really doesn't matter to me. Cheapest money possible is what I want.
Sure.
So I borrow from Russia if they let us.
No,
Oh,
no. Can you back up that recording? please?
Yeah. Serious.
Joe Smith said that, not Matt Raper.
Shall we get the cheapest money we can?
So on that term and at those rates, what does a 3% versus a 3.4, 3.5 or 3.6?
Every
Exactly.
tenth of a percent over the course of 30 years is $78,000 in interest on $4 million. So if we borrow 4 million today and it goes to 4%, that's going to be 60 basis points times 78,000 a piece, going to be about $500,000 in total dollars out the door over 30 years.
On $4 million.
Yes.
It's a lot.
If we're going to borrow, now's the time to borrow. If we're going to not borrow, then we need to figure out if we're going to raise rates the rest of the year or use our short-term money until we raise rates next year. So I guess that's kind of how.
And borrowing money ensures rates for our members currently.
Yes. So at least our next cost. Because we, as Brett said, the original work plan, they budgeted to borrow $4.2 million. And we are eating through it now. So. I mean, if you'd like, we've got enough 219s in to borrow 5.3. I wouldn't be opposed to that either. I think we'd come out ahead in the long run, even prepaying Hoosier and setting the money aside for next year's work plan.
So how does the Hoosier prepayment compare to the CFC daily fund?
It's better because Hoosier gives us credit for what they're paying. CFC has to make money on it.
So either way, I mean, there's some opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be fine. I'm 5.3 too. I mean, I would borrow as much right now, interest. I mean, it's like I said in December, interest is dirt cheap. And it's going up.
It's trending.
I don't think it's not the once in a lifetime opportunity it was, but it's still way lower than our blended interest rate. And it's less than inflation. I mean,
So I'm gonna throw this in the muddy of the water, and I know that we're gonna discuss this in the Hoosier part. But does that additional retirement change your mind at all?
the extra money we got,
Like, is our appetite gonna be, I guess this is a board question, is our appetite gonna be that we're gonna pass that all on through? Or we're gonna,
that is another question too. How much of that money do we,
I don't know that really affects this decision that much, but
it does
it's cash flow.
cash.
I
I mean,
That's an extra 300 we weren't planning on. The additional retirement.
it's cash. I mean, it's just like that 250 we paid back to RUS. That's cash we don't have anymore. I still think that was the right choice because we can borrow it back now for less. So, I mean, we still arbitrage 3% on our money there.
And the user thing's tough because why did we do it at user? And the user thing's tough because why did you guys at user do it? Did it because of the tracker?
Mitigate the increase in the tracker. It should really go to the members.
That's what it was in.
But as we know, not everyone does that.
I agree.
Yes. That's another question too, you guys can decide is what is the plan for that money going forward too? Because that could have a major impact on things as well.
I'm just glad we didn't.
You mean the tracker?
Know what we do with Hoosier's money.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up. I
If we
mean,
pass all that through, well, that's different than if we keep, say, half of it or.
that's gonna make retirements this year about 1.6. If we
Rather
pass
large, yes.
through. That would be the most ever. I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just saying that's the number.
That's a decision too that you guys,
But I think that all kind of correlates.
it all goes
I
together.
know we're jumping around a little bit here in the agenda, but
That's why I say if you guys have a plan for how you want to spend the cash, it should, I mean, what we need to do versus what. I mean, it's give us the guardrails to go with and it's
personally, and this is just me, but I would like to pass the Hoosier money right on through like it was intended.
I don't want to do all of it, so.
Part of it.
We had budgeted almost 1.3. That would make it almost 1.6 if we passed it all through. And he is correct. That's the reason the Hoosier board decided to do that. That was the mitigation step we took for the members to offset the increase in the tracker.
Yes.
Now,
It's gonna hit hard.
but the tracker,
Doesn't hit us.
well, not Decatur County RNC, but it hits our members. And, you know, if this fuel and energy crisis continues, we may see more increases to the tracker in Q4,
Yeah,
which could also affect our members. So,
yeah.
you know, I don't know. I don't know what I know what I'd like to do, but
And that's why it's all for discussion.
as we talked about earlier today too, you know, if you did pass that on through, you're still accessing pretty cheap money.
Yes. And as I said, it's you guys' decision. It's not my decision.
So when you say you don't want, you thought maybe we would hang on to a little bit of that for what purpose? To reduce the borrow?
What purpose? I feel like I feel like we should have about $1.5 million on hand in cash and that.
Okay.
I mean, that's the number, when Jenny and I talked, that was kind of the number that we fell on, that we felt like was, hey, this balances because cash is, there's a cost. It costs money to have cash. And that's where I felt like the balance was between, plus and philosophically, I don't know that I agree with passing it all the way back through. So, I mean, I'd rather use some of it to fix the plant, use it for plant investments and things like that. Do I think we should keep 100% of it like some of our peers do? No. Do I think we should keep some of it? Maybe. But that's you guys'. I'm a firm believer with stable rates, and the best way to make sure you have stable rates is pretty good pot of gold in the bank and you have a pretty good margin. I would rather people pay a tick more today than have to go to them 3 years from now and say it's more and more and more and more. So I guess that's I'm a plan. This is going to be the cost as best we can get it. And I know the tracker flows through, but I mean, I would like to return capital credits over a much quicker locally time frame too. I mean, I'd use some of it to pay our own back. high margins is easier from a cash flow standpoint. That's. But I also know that there's balance. That's with all this stuff. There's a balance.
Sure.
It's any leg of the stool can go too far one way. So.
So do we need action on this? Is that where we're at? That's where we're at.
There's
And your recommendation is what, Matt? Bottom line?
I felt like the $4 million balanced the maximum we could borrow versus what we need to get through the year, plus have some to pay back the CFC stuff next year.
It was currently 3.4, you said?
As of today, yes.
Discussion, anyone?
Question, Dale?
Is there any more discussion? Is
I do think too, plus based off the costs that come in on our work plan stuff. The work plan was created in 2018 based off 2018 costs. It ain't there no more.
And they go back.
You're telling me there's a need for the additional cash?
Yeah, probably, yeah. I can't tell you exactly how much yet because some of the things haven't been bid or we haven't, it's reasonable back and,
Reasonable to assume without a doubt.
but I figure whatever they are, you're gonna add 20%, you might be close. And while it is hard to see that it's gone up, you just have to look and see that it's still cheap.
Well, my guess would be if we don't do it tonight, we're gonna be suggesting, or we're gonna be visiting and saying, man, we missed the boat. We should have done it June 28th or whatever tonight is. Because I think the trend is definitely on the end.
Well, June 29th. Let's
29th. The June meeting, how's that?
just teasing.
Already approved 3.2. I thought. It's the question of the actual A. Would go.
Say that again, Jason.
So if we do the 4 million and the 3.4%, that pretty much can ensure us at this moment, we can put that Hoosier money back to the members and keep the rates the same.
And that all depends on the cost of service.
As of this minute.
Yes. As of this
I
minute.
my gut tells me that you are correct. That we will.
I firmly believe that'll get us through the end of the year, yeah.
And if it doesn't, it means more work's getting done, more plan
Yes.
are made, and that's what we were upset not happening, so
That's where the money's gonna
that's where my
go.
mind is going right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's work getting done.
Like what says you?
Would this be on a 30-year?
That's what I would do unless you have that is the 30-year rate, yeah. I guess I figured you want to borrow as much for as long as you can as the
Fixed, right? It's fixed, no repricing.
it's fixed for 30 years. I felt like with inflation running the way it is, it's chewing up the value anyway.
So can the motion be a two-parter with a contingency? The capital credit money?
Should we ever not pay back capital credit?
Started that way. Yes, we haven't held
I
it.
really want that capital credit.
The last 3 years.
Jeff and I first got on board.
I just thought it went on here. But he said that this would ensure Hoosier credits go back to the members.
Well, that's our choice though.
I'd like to wait till October, November to decide that. I want to give the money back. I want to see where we're at.
I like that.
300
too.
Pardon?
The 300.
No,
retirement.
the total.
Wait a minute.
You want to give it all back from Hoosier, but wait till October to do so?
I want to wait and see where our financials are before I would commit. Is where I'm at.
So, but we already have the 1.3-ish, the budget that we approved. We're not messing with that. We're just talking about the additional 300, correct?
No, I thought you had a special capital credit return.
300,000.
So that was the special part. See, I thought this was all additional from the January that we received.
No, well, it is,
Like I
but
say-
we had already planned the special one, the regular one, and then the special one that's gonna be for the next 5 years, or, that's the intention. And then this additional one, which is returning 21 margins. So that's the 300. So that's how you got to the almost $1 million.
Hold off on the 300 till later in the year. It's probably not a bad idea.
When is the budgeted retirement gonna go out then in August?
We credit on
But
it.
but I will run that process live in July the 26th. It will hit members' bills as a credit on August bill.
That amount is what, Crystal?
1.3 million.
9.7.
It's 629 for Decatur County and 668 for Hoosier.
My desk, I don't know.
I've got it.
I haven't tested yet.
That's out of the budget.
Yeah, it's already signed.
Yeah, you guys already did a resolution.
Yeah.
Jason, you want to say something?
I'm okay with 300 until later in the year. I have no problem with that.
$1,297,630.
Is there a reason we're not doing something?
I don't know.
I'm about to crash.
No one wants their name associated with that. I'm gonna make the motion that we take Matt's recommendation and borrow the 4 million at the 3.5, give or take percent for the 30-year term. No strings attached.
No other restriction on the, there's your capital credits. Okay, so we have a motion for 4 million.
At the lowest interest rate possible.
Exactly.
I think I established all of it for that.
Because I still think at the end of the day, that it'll look really cheap. at
I
that
do
point.
too. My meeting is gonna look really cheap.
Who knows? But I think at some point in time, that will look like very cheap money.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Oppose?
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
That's 701.
Yes.
Two.
Was that Clay?
No, I don't. I oppose.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
That was easy.
Next topic, requests for the top, top 25 user list. I know that, Jeff, you had sent a request,
Right, this used to be presented to the board every January,
right,
and I would like to get it back to where it's presented to the board in January board meeting.
January timeframe.
Yes,
I don't know if that ever been do. So you got your information.
I did. Thank you.
And then, can you share with the board? Because I think what you were hoping to accomplish was to compare the rate of return. How are you calculating that?
Dividing the total cost by kilowatts consumed, just like we do on the Form 7. And I'm not deducting facility charge, which probably should be deducted.
So you're just averaging everything together?
Correct.
So
Just like we do with the Form 7, just like Hoosier does. So, yes,
What do you,
I would like, pardon,
what are you comparing that per KWH to?
what we're paying.
it's all
For
different.
that?
Well, I would like to have an opportunity to sit down and talk with Matt about this, if I could. And then maybe I'll understand it better.
So,
We can discuss it now.
yeah,
I mean, we've discussed this. There's
Okay.
like 4 action items.
I believe there's 4 meters over the last 3 years. Actually, I believe there was just 2 last year that didn't pay the cost of power. And I'm basing the average annual cost that comes off of the key indicator sheet.
Yeah, you can't use.
You have to, because the wholesale, we only have 2 bills, or 2 charges, right? Or 2 rates, wholesale and industrial. Unless there is a different calculation for what we're charging each commercial member, something's not right.
So let's discuss this because this is like very, very important to.
Okay, then let's jump down to, we can go on the 2021, jump down to meter account 23-1100-1400. It's basically the last one on the second page.
last,
On the back page, it's printed 2 sides.
I don't think your calculation for KWH is wrong. I think the key indicators that I'm trying to bring up here.
Which,
Good. That's why I want to get rid of it.
well, for December of 2021, the average cost was 7.1979 cents for the year.
Correct. Is this the one you're looking at?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not showing this on the computer, so it's just in this room. So you're using this right here.
Correct.
Okay.
The average cost of wholesale. Because we only have one bill that goes to 8 different substations that are put together to average for this cost.
But we have variable rates depending on load. Every single member in every single class cost at Hoosier for power is different. That's why you have a variable rate. If you're using that 7.
If you look at Hoosier's rate, no, we just have one rate for the entire system, which is all 8 subs.
But it's variable depending on the KWH and the.
But if you go and you look at the Hoosier rate comparison, have they done one recently? The last one that's out on the dashboard is 19.
I don't know if they have or not.
It shows our large commercial is over $500 less than the average. We're in, and I'm just pulling these up now. So we're $200 less per month than the closest
So
each of us.
you're using the Hoosier survey for commercial, right?
Yeah, and then I'm also going and pulling the comparison off the government's website of what we're paying for KWH compared to all the other REMCs in the state.
let's bite off the first one. So when Larry Feltner was here, he explained to us, and basically, I think it's in an action item somewhere. He talks about the user survey uses a specific load factor, which our load factor is completely different.
But it compares the same rate for every Hoosier member using the same consumption.
Discuss this.
Okay, then I stand corrected. I would still like to talk to Matt on it. Because there's no need to keep us all here and argue about it.
I don't want to argue about it, but we've been chasing this for 5 years.
Matt, can you?
I hope-
Interject anything?
The way I understood talking to Larry when I went down there is you have, so when we put out our large commercial, it's an average of all the large commercials. Some of them are, the basis on which we assign is cost basis. So if you happen to be one of the unfortunate people who needs three-phase at the very end of the line, you get more costs because everybody along the way to you, I shouldn't have to pay for your three-phase line because I didn't need it. So you're going to have different rates based off of what people need based off the cost they cause.
So you're saying where they're located within the system is they're being charged more? That's the first I've ever heard this.
That's not how that works.
No,
So.
No,
We've been through this several times and
But I mean,
we haven't explained it correctly, and that's okay. So you talked with Larry Feltner about it, talked with Brett. When's the rate consultant coming?
Third
He's a little
quarter.
bit behind right now.
yeah, I emailed him.
I would love to talk to him, Jason.
Why can't we, I think that would be great.
I would love to.
Can we just allow that conversation to take place and whoever else wants to participate can? I think you guys all participated with Larry the last time on that. I was part of that discussion.
I mean, I am not an expert at that. I mean, Larry's been doing it
I would love that.
40 years. I have to
wanted to word last time and I
Certainly.
so, but yes, thank you. And we move on tonight.
Okay.
I support one board member talking to him. I think everybody needs to be.
I'm fine
Well,
with that too.
open it up if you want to come.
Yeah.
If you don't want to come, just come up with,
Okay.
A day that's gonna
Right.
sue somebody that.
and don't tie it into the meeting night, please.
Do what?
Don't tie it into this meeting.
All right. So
Thank you.
moving on. All right, rules and regulations, there's been some modifications. I believe, new rule 3132. Brad, you want to?
So
I don't know.
when we were working with, with legal to write the meter poll, legal letter, they just noticed that in our appendix, we don't have rule 31, 32 in the appendix A. So essentially all we're doing is adding those rules into the appendix. It's like,
Okay, because I was there. That's the only change.
that's it.
Because the rules were, yeah, okay.
The rules are already there.
But we still need to, already approve that. We need a motion to approve the changes to it.
They're not in there.
Pardon?
Did I understand you right? They said they 31, 33.
The appendices.
What's
were not
red is the
here.
only thing that's being
Yeah.
changed.
The other.
Everything else
items
has been
were
approved.
there.
Because you're saying the rules were there, they just weren't referenced.
Right.
So moved, you need that motion.
Okay, got first.
I'll second.
Okay, second. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Opposed, same. All right, next item. I know Brett brought this up, I think it was last meeting. I was gonna get something out and find out who might be interested. And I think that's how we'll put it up now. Do you want to share what responsibilities may occur?
How often
Yeah.
they meet.
How frequently?
So they've already went and visited some, by the way, I'm not on this committee. This committee is a couple of the guys in the back. I think there's 3 of them all together. Pat,
Me, Pat, Eric, Matt, no, Joe, me, Eric, Pat, and Eric.
I think there'll probably be 4, maybe 3 to 4, maybe 5 meetings, probably an hour long.
Okay.
So there's,
We're talking about a board delegate to that committee?
yeah,
How many from the board do you want on there?
it's up to you guys. I don't know, everybody.
I vote 0.
I would like to see a board member on, someone with,
It doesn't matter to me.
Have volunteers?
I do think it
no,
would be nice to have somebody just because, I mean, this is gonna be a big ask.
I understand it. Me, just by definition, as I look at it, it's counterintuitive. It's an operations issue, and to have a board member on it, it's contradiction in terms. My concern becomes that a board member on there stymies the thought process of them. We as a board have the right to approve, not approve, go back, do whatever. That, and I think we reserve that right, but I think putting a board member on that committee,
I would like to see 2 board members.
I think with an investment of this size,
But it's totally up to you.
I think with an investment of this size, there should be a board member involved. I feel like this is more long-term. This is not just your average.
And by the way, so the scope is, just so everyone knows, the scope is not to do anything with this front part of this building. This is literally from, well, you know where the hallway starts, back.
we have any idea scope-wise, dollar-wise, what we're talking?
I have no idea.
Conjure a guess.
$1.5 million
Year low.
I probably.
That's what it was.
Agree.
That's what it was. Yeah.
I'm not scared.
Hey, this is gonna be one of those deals where you're gonna get into and you're gonna find out that, well, you gotta fix this. You're gonna have to be compliant to all these things that,
You're gonna run into the remodel with Traco.
yes.
That's what you're gonna run into there.
You're gonna run into what, Matt?
It's gonna be like remodeling a building, and the best way to do it is with the Traco.
I don't support that at all.
That's my opinion. That might. not be
It
the
could
case.
be completely wrong, who knows?
Like to be on that.
You would like?
When you get something a certain age, I guess from my experience, I've learned that once it gets to be a certain age, you spend more money fixing it than you do just replacing it. But
I have a question. What does board representation on that committee add?
Understand.
I would say that they would just champion the project so that they'll support the project coming into here and be able to answer questions and things like that. Honestly, I would view, and that's probably something we need to talk about before we get into this, because I really, that has a leader, it has a scope. I don't know that the board member needs to stay quiet, but more or less needs to let the process go. I wouldn't expect a board member in there dictating how to do the project, what to do.
It never hurts to be on there to ask questions as far as when, where, why. Give me a logical.
well, that's why I wanted to be on there, because I wanted to know, well, what's this gonna cost? What's I mean, why is this necessary? I think it'd be the same type of thing.
Is everybody good with play?
Well, first of all, as a board, let's decide if we want to have a representation. And then if so, I mean, I've heard 0, 1, 2.
I vote we have representation.
I'll second that. I just think for more communication with the board versus having hearsay come back and forth of a project of that size.
I'm okay with it. I just want whoever it is to not try and take it over.
Okay,
So we'll just call out, well, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying.
I think you were.
I think more of a communicating piece.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think so. I think like a liaison.
Listening to anything.
okay, well, we have a motion on what, All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion.
The motion was
To have
to
someone,
have someone.
Do we need a motion for that?
I decided as
But you made one, we voted.
because if the motion is to vote on whether or not to have one, I'm a dissent.
okay.
I'm in favor.
And now, I mean, we could just, I think one's fine as well, if everybody's agreeing with that. And since Clay, is there anybody else that's interested that would want to? So I don't know, I mean, I'm fine. I'll go ahead and just say, Clay, you're that member. So.
Do we need a
we
motion?
just have to see, you gotta wait. I'll be here too. Just.
Yep. Clay Pat will be reaching out to you. I'm not on that committee, so Pat's gonna.
All right, community trust nominations. Jason, yeah. You got your people?
Yeah. Same one.
Okay.
Same member. Do you need the name?
Well, so you said same one. I didn't hear what you.
I have a new one. My previous one didn't want to do the second term.
Okay.
Carolyn Hohen. And she is on the member list.
Super.
Yeah, I would just make the motion to approve Jason's current running ones.
What's their name for the minutes?
Sue, Suehahn.
This was.
Yeah.
So I need a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the nomination.
I'll second.
Earl second. She's gonna be in the motion. So all in favor, say aye.
That's, oh, sorry. So that's for both, right? Not just for Jason?
Right, we're doing both.
Okay.
Collectively.
Aye.
There you go. All right, everyone's getting tired. Hometown Energy. You have something?
We have a meeting.
Next, in July 25th,
Did we get something to say? Well, I don't know.
next month.
Jason, have we,
No, there's no June Hoosier meeting, board meeting. There was a finance and audit committee meeting. Obviously, we talked a lot about the paper that went out. We discussed it at length here. I'm sorry if I was unclear about what those were, but the total was $960,000. There really wasn't that much. It was a finance and audit committee. There really wasn't a whole lot that came out of that. I do have something I want to bring attention to the board, and Brett, you're going to have to help me on this regarding Touchstone.
Yes.
So in the past, Hoosier has subsidized, I guess, if you will, the distribution co-ops membership into Touchstone Energy. That's going to be changing. So I'm going to ask someone from staff to help me out as far as what our membership in Touchstone is getting us and what it's going to end up costing us, and if we're going to continue that.
Yep. We actually have that on our project list. I don't think I've assigned it. Anyway.
Okay, all right. I just want to keep it, I want to keep a handle on that.
Yeah, we need to get started on it now. I'm mixed.
But I don't have the information to make the decision.
Yeah, we'll get you. Yep. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it as an action item.
Okay. That's really all I wanted to talk about.
Realized what I did.
And then we're gonna table this one says allocation. We're gonna table the retirement, special patronage, hang on to that till fall.
until fall?
I'm fine with that.
I just need to know, 30 days before you want to.
If we decided to,
Say to do it. It's that long to.
Yeah.
Get it.
So you'll need October to hit December's bills. So
Yes.
you need more than, you need 2 months.
Yeah.
Realistic.
Yeah.
Okay. You got it.
somebody keep that in mind. I will.
I see, I think I made you guys aware that the gas from had resigned at 527. Adrian Tiernan is the acting CEO. She's the current CFO there. But the interim CEO will be Tom Van Paris, who is actually, I think most of you remember.
He was at IEC, he did our.
Yeah, so he's coming back as the interim CEO until a replacement is actually found, which, you know, they're kind of suggesting it'll probably won't be till the first of next year. That's what happened there. I sent you guys some workshop info late this afternoon. Some of you may have seen it. It's a CFC workshop. Some topics include economic update, understanding financial statements, electric rates, new approaches to rate making. If I'm not mistaken, I can't remember when I attended, but I went to one of those probably 7-8 years ago. But if you want to consider doing that, I think you have till July 10th to register. The facilities committees, you know, we're still searching possibilities, trying to keep the search within the confines of the 465. I'm not so sure when a decision will actually be made. It's been very slow up to this point, but I think we're in the right direction at this point. That's all I have for IEC. Director training and conferences. I did attend the CFC forum. And I'm telling you guys, I mean, it's CFC forum is known for being like the conferences of all conferences, and it didn't disappoint. Besides the opportunity to meet many co-op employees and directors across the country and hear about the conferences and hear about their co-op making, sorry, I wrote this down and, okay. So this conference includes many great presentations. Some of those, there were 3 economists, and you know, the only certainty was that nobody knows for sure what's going to take place from here on out. It feels like a recession, even though it doesn't meet all the requirements of us being in a recession. There was an inspirational speaker. Steve Wozniak was there, former Secretary of Energy, Ernest Moniz. But it's a great opportunity if you guys ever have the opportunity to attend, it is going to be in Indianapolis in 2 years. So.
I assume it's about like the training I went to, at CFC and NRCF.
Oh, okay.
It was good.
It was very good. So. Any questions? That was that. I'm ready. Motion to adjourn.
Wait, I did have one more thing.
I have a quick question. iPad update. You
Uh,
have an iPad update?
They've been ordered, we just haven't received them yet, so it should be anytime.
You got mine. That's mine.
Yes.
I think we do need to approve it, but it's not in the board packet, so you guys might have never seen this. We'll hold off.
Great.
I didn't even know it was sitting over there.
Meeting minutes.
So the nominating committee had, a couple of them had reached out about, I mean, basically what I heard was to attend the annual meeting, gas prices are up, blah, blah, blah. I don't know that they actually, I think one of them asked, why wouldn't we get the per diem? The answer was, well, it's always been like kind of what the directors do, which is it's part of your duties and responsibilities, but it's not clear in the policies at all, whether they would or not. And then I think, so one may have been asking for the per diem, and then one may have been asking for, or a couple had asked for mileage. So the question to you all is, do we want to do that or not? To me, it doesn't matter either.
I'd gladly do it. I'll make the motion to do it.
Yeah.
It's either the per diem and the mileage, and then next year I'd also like, if everybody else is gonna have a shirt, they need to have a shirt.
So we have a motion to include the per diem and mileage.
I'll second it.
Have a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same.
But we're gonna leave ours the same. Correct.
Blue shirt.
Check it in, because.
That's a good.
Yeah. I just, I need a blue shirt.
I have it on my list. What size do you wear?
Teasing. Oh, no. Reporters running, that's now. Oh, you've lost. Worth it. I used to love the word. Is that a cut joke?
Quit bragging.
Yeah.
I don't even where it's going.
Quit bragging, Clay.
You kind of paused. That's a little surprising.
I have those small women in there. if you
No,
want
I'm good.
Look. Now you're ready for
to
the.
be ordered and let you know when it's here.
Thank you.
Be quiet.
You know, the beat-
Does anyone have anything else? Okay, the next board meeting is on the fourth Thursday of the month.
28th. Why, what? 28th?
Is
Well, I have
it the 28th?
That's what I had in my calendar.
Okay,
Yes, you need to move it.
not on that.
No.
Motion to it.
Please move it.
Well, no, wait.
Oh, wait. You have something else on the 28th?
I have something else to tell before I forget, just.
Okay, but we're gonna shut that off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Steve, I did get a phone call from a member whose daughter attended the Washington, and they would like to come to the board meeting.
I was-
to present.
I was gonna mention that,
Okay.
and I didn't realize she wanted to come in July, but I tried to make arrangements that she was going to present. And I was gonna mention that with IC, the youth tour just ended last Thursday, if I'm not mistaken.
So whoever needs to coordinate that, you know who it is, you can take care of that or whatever.
You're talking about the youth.
Youth tour?
Yeah.
You know what? That was on.
It doesn't have to do with it.
I can make it happen.
Her mom called me and just wanted to find out when they could come. So I told her just to come.
But asked that they come in and
present to them.
So I'll take care of that portion of it. Okay. Anything else? I need a motion to adjourn it. We have one.
Second.
A second. All right. We have a couple more things. This is not executive